All right, we're live here with the second annual podcast. I have to confess something about the word annual. I didn't know annual meant yearly. I thought it meant like a very long time between doing an event. So, you know, I was tempted to not make another one of these until another year had passed, but I guess I was too compelled. So, I've been recently wanting to do another podcast, but my two previous co-hosts, people who saw the first episode, will remember as Beatroll and Guy. They're both kind of they're people that can be difficult to get inspired or enthused to do something. That's just the kind of men they are. So whatever. If you ever like ask someone like, "Hey man, you want to do this?" and they're like, "Oh yeah, that'd be cool, I guess." And it's just they answer something to placate you. That's kind of the vibe I was getting. So I have two people here that I'm sort of ready to do the second episode with. A very different group. Whereas Beat and Guy were two people who have been playing as long as me, if not longer, actually. In Guy's case, we have two different people here. So if you two gentlemen would introduce yourselves, I guess our first guest is he's the newest to OMK out of all of us, but what do you want to be called, man? Because you have the name George on Discord.
Yeah, currently I'm a rollback George, but I think Chariot knows me better as Kundi, but I'm fine with George. It is easier to remember and say.
Okay, yeah. And then our second guest, I've spoken to him once or twice before, Zariat.
Hello.
All right.
I've been here for a while.
Yeah,
Kind of offended that we're basically your backup plan, but okay.
Well, hey, I put out feelers, and this is what I got. So, I put it out there kind of just like for anyone who wanted to respond. Because I'm very much you message people and bug them. Yeah, that can work. But if you have people who are just willing to be like, yeah, I'll do it. I'm like, okay, fucking A, let's do it, right?
Right.
Okay, well, with that in mind, let's think about this, right? So, how long have you been playing OMK, George?
I started last year December when the game was released. I think it was like 1 week before after it or something.
Oh,
I don't quite remember.
Yeah, so about like the Steam release is what you're saying then.
The Steam release, yeah. I heard about the game before like 1 year. I was like, oh, this is really cool. But then I forgot about it, and then I remember it when all the Yumineko games were released, and I was like, maybe there's a small chance that the fighting game could be released. But I was like, nah, I don't think it's going to be. But then when it was released, I was super hyped and waited very patiently, and when it came, I was like, super hyped, and yeah.
I think all of us were like, none of us expected for it to actually make it on Steam. It was just like a hay dream, completely.
Yeah, my number one question when it was released was, is this going to be good, the net play? Okay, so anyway, before we get into kind of the discussion topics that we've mentioned here,
Right.
Is there anything, George, anything else you have about, like your fighting game experience, something like that?
I don't have any fighting game experience. I did play some Street Fighter 2 when I was like 10 or 11, but it was just Honda spamming as usually. But I'm a FPS gamer. I play few FPS games competitively. Oh God, I cannot pronounce anything. Sorry for advance. But yeah, I didn't have any fighting game experience. I didn't know anything about them. I was like, this is a Yumineko game. I think it looks kind of basic. And when I played, I realized how wrong I was when I played against actually good people.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting to hear. This will be coming up later, but the only reason I even bothered to delve into fighting games, I'm like you, I played Street Fighter 2 when I was a teenager, but the only reason I ever even bothered was because I read Tsukihime, and I love Tsukihime, great visual novel, but Melty Blood is a game based loosely on that. Same characters and stuff. Yeah, the universe. We will get into that. But yeah, basically, loosely, the characters go from thing to thing. with a lot of new ones as well in Kagetsutoya. So I just thought, hey, I like this visual novel. I guess I'll play this game. And funnily enough, that wasn't the same for me with OMK in this, but I hear that story a lot. You talk to people and they say, "Hey, why'd you get into OMK?" And they're like, "Oh, the visual novel or just the themes of Umineko." So that's interesting to hear. Okay, Zaret. So let's learn a little about you.
Well, I tried the game out in like vanilla. It felt like a brick, so I dropped it. And then like 3 years later or something. Actually, no. When did Cross come out? 2.31.
Oh, dude. If you're gonna talk dates, I'll say maybe 2, 3,
okay.
4 years ago.
Yeah,
no, about 4. I want to say.
Like basically when the last non-manga gamer version of Vogon Cross hit, that's when I gave the game another shot, and I just stuck with it since. I want to say that if it were like, I don't feel comfortable saying this, but I basically feel like everything I found first, but nobody took me seriously. Like,
That's classic.
okay. No, it's because back in the IRC days, #Mineko was the only place where Ogon happened.
For sure.
You had the NA regulars, which were you, John, Larry, Guy, Beat. Like some other times, 1 or 2 other guys showed up, and those were the NA guys. You had like that one guy from Mexico as well, I think.
Yeah, Luce, I believe was
Luce.
Luce.
And then I was alone in Europe.
Oh yeah, that's sad.
Okay. I have nobody to play with, but I'm gonna keep finding my stuff. I remember playing Larry in old Netcode D7, and that was so bad. That was so bad.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
But yeah, I've been playing since then. It's not my first foray into the genre, though. I've also been playing Melty Blood since, I want to say 2012, relatively seriously.
Oh yeah, 2018 right now for reference, so good 6 years.
Yeah, it's been 6 years.
Yeah.
It's a good genre. It's a fun game.
I've been, I don't know when it was, but near the later side of At Cadenza is when I was playing Melty.
PS2 version? Oh no, wait.
At Cadenza was like the PC version.
Yeah, version B. Yeah, that was the
Yeah, version B. That's what it was.
Yeah, that was the last version of At Cadenza before they got into Actress again. Some say it was the best version of the game. I say they're wrong.
Yeah, that'd be another interesting topic if this were a more Melty focused stream. But all right, well, with that in mind, I've given the introduction to myself, but some people may be tuning into this for the first time. So I'm John Arific, pronounced John Arific, like something being terrific. So some people say Jonah. That's incorrect, but it's not gonna kill me if people do that. So I've been playing OMK. I don't know if it was literally in 1.0, but I remember at least playing it, and I'm not sure. A little later, I played more because it was stiff. I remember going back to the very first version of the game, and I play Ken and Lucy, and a lot of their game plan is like later canceling, and man, like there was no later canceling in that. So if you didn't like,
the game was super stiff. You just couldn't do anything.
Yeah. So thankfully they ended up loosening things a bit, and now it's a serviceable game in terms of functionality, I guess.
Yeah, it played like a fighting game, but that's about it.
Yeah. The little things in it and the systems within it, we'll probably have a lot to say here. But yeah, for fighting games, it's pretty much I played a lot of Street Fighter 2. Among my family and group of friends, I was like Ryu and spamming Hadokens. I had the basic premise of do Hadokens, and if someone jumps at you, DP them. And that got me really far for almost everyone I ever played. So that was nice. But yeah, beyond that, just a bit of Melty. 8 or 9 years ago, I played a lot of Chaos. I know you don't like Chaos, sorry, but that's my main man there.
Zoo mains.
Yeah, zoo means putting out the zoo. Anyway, all right. So I think that the reason I play OMK is just because it's flashy. I remember just seeing. I really had nothing to do with OMK, or Umineko, I should say. But I just saw the absolute flashiness. I always say the story about Beatrice. I'll call her Beatrice from now on. How she throws out like knives that turn into scantily clad fan service girls that chop people up with laser swords, and there's like 7 of them, and I'm like, whoa, that's badass. Like, okay, and then on top of all that, one of the laser sword characters is playable with her imaginary laser sword, and on top of that, like it just keeps going more and more. You're just stacking up things John likes over and over. And then at the very end, she steps on them and like gives out this horrible cackle, and she's like, and I'm like, wow, okay, I gotta give this a try, right? Like
That was a spot-on Beatrice impression, I can tell.
well, the line has stuck with me, to say the least. So that's pretty much the only reason I played this game. Which this will be an interesting kind of preface later for one of our other questions about. I've said many times I hate fighting games, but so we'll get into more stuff later. But yeah, I don't know why I play OMK. Other than that reason, and now I've just kind of done it. I've met 2 friends of about 6-7 years now. It's crazy to think about, but yeah, I've met friends of 6-7 years. The 2 previous members on the podcast. We've actually had IRL meetups. Beat's coming to visit me next week, literally. Recording of this podcast. Yeah. He's been to my place twice, and this will be his 3rd time. And he's not super far. I mean, it's a decent drive, but it's doable. So it's cool, right? And it's something about that. It's like, well, there's friendship there, and now our friendship has kind of gone beyond it. But something about the game was always going to have that little place in my heart, of it's one of the first fighting games I really took seriously.
Fundamentally, you got like serious friendships out of it. So, damn, I actually didn't know. Damn, put some streams on. I want to see that.
Yeah. Well, we'll play. Beat, I think, is better than me now. I also don't practice as much, but anyway, I did play against him a little while ago, and I think I mostly got the better of him. I mean, I like.
Yeah, you guys went roughly even, but I don't know how asleep he was. I don't know.
Oh well, I was playing low tiers. Just saying.
So I was playing George.
Well, I mean, I'm not Johnning, right? I'm just saying, go even with my low tiers. Just throwing that out there. But yeah, so if we move on kind of to our discussion topic, so the main thing I think is really a nice opening thing, breaking the ice between OMK players, because everyone has a character they like or a team they play. So I happen to have a little insider information for people unfamiliar with these 2 gentlemen and their conversations within our Discord. Which anyone who's listening, through some reason you stumble across this on the internet. We do have a Discord for this, and you could join it. It's the official manga gamer Golden Fantasia Umineko Discord. I'm sure.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, you can find that.
I didn't mention it at the start, but I am one of the moderators on that Discord server, so it is open to anyone. So feel free to join if you want to join in on discussions or just to play this game. We want players.
Yeah, we have. I'd say at one point we basically had a bunch of really good people, right? And it was like you had to engage in tribal warfare, almost like some gang shit, where it's like you're just gonna get wailed on by 4 guys who are just way better than you. If you want to get good, that's just how you're gonna play. But
I know that from experience.
Yeah. Most movies it happens.
Yeah, the thing is, I'm always trying. If someone asks for a game, I'm like, okay, tell you what, I'll play my characters that aren't my best characters, and I know I'm not gonna curb stomp them, right? But I'm gonna use my fundamentals to win. But I'm gonna use low tiers. I'm gonna use characters that aren't super crazy or resetting people or the top tiers of the game that are just like, wow, these are fucking amazing. I'll play like.
I thought first that you main Sister and Shannon because you played them so well, but when I saw you Canon and Lucy, I lost my mind because it was so smooth and perfect and everything. I was lost of words and everything after you played Canon and Lucy. So
Oh, I appreciate it.
dramatic.
Yeah, well, yeah. I do like to play other characters. A lot of people think, I only play those three well, but I do delve into other things. I guess to start off the discussion about the characters and teams, yeah, my three go-to characters when I'm feeling it are Canon, Lucy, and Battler. A little more emphasis on the Canon and Lucy. I kind of just picked Battler because with those teams, I feel that Battler is a better choice. If you want to do silent attack shenanigans with like Battler and Cannon, Battler's laser is better for kind of applying that, as well as like even his pressure a lot of the time. You can still generally get a stun with those characters, so that's a better application of Cannon's silent attack. And with Lucy and Cannon, with that Lucy's like extra attack touch and more ground pressure. There's nothing wrong with having two very fast, swift characters, bobbing in and out of situations, but Cannon kind of already does that, and Lucy doesn't take as much advantage of Cannon's silent attack, especially with her ability. I end up doing a lot of dash cancels, and I think a lot about how to optimize it. But they have really good synergy between neutraling. Going Lucy to Cannon gives Cannon an attack touch, and if you get a meta, that's two extra attack touches you wouldn't otherwise have. And with silent attack, if you silent attack into Lucy, all of a sudden, whenever people are like, oh, well, I just block Lucy, and she sucks, it's like, well, that's fine, but now you're not getting any meter, and I am. So that's the general like premise and construction, and then I'm also just really great at like fighting people and using fundamentals in terms of getting to a point where like I'm reading people and forcing them to do things that they may not want to do. And no character. This game is very Street Fighter-esque in that regard. You don't have a lot of characters that just run up to someone and immediately like start a fight. It's equivalent to fencing. Not that you have to be a fencing person, but in fencing, when you approach someone, there is a certain style of you're just kind of putting your foil in their face and saying, "Do something, faggot." So I like to think of that kind of as my style. But well, what about you? What sort of teams do you two play?
I play George. I think it's kind of obvious that he's my main character. And as for the other people, it's kind of I always change them. At first it was Eva because he's like George's mother. Then it was Runaway because he's my favorite character in Yumineko. Then I played him so much I got bored. Then I went to Virgilia or Leah because her alt color was same as George. That was actually the only reason why I did it. And then
aesthetics first. Okay, yeah, I agree.
And then same thing happened with Black Butler because his hair color was same as George's alt hair color. It was also the only reason. Then I went back to Runaway. Then I played him a lot. Then for some reason I started playing Shannon with George.
Well,
I don't know why.
Because it's George's waifu, dude.
Yeah, that's true. And suddenly I started playing Lucy with George. So not recently I played some games as Lucy George team. I mean, I know I'm not good with Lucy, so I lost very badly. But yeah, I saw some reasons I started playing Lucy. I don't know why. I just changed. It's always George as my main, and it's always going to be.
Yeah,
Hey, character loyalists, they're a thing, man. Respectable.
Definitely. You're still kind of, because you started 6 months ago, compared to myself, who's been playing. It's like 6 years effectively at this point. I think you're in that like kind of era of discovery where you're still like fiddling with things, whereas the more you play, the more you kind of settle into something you may already be comfortable with or already know, or just I've sampled everything, now I'm settling down with what I want, the middle-aged man syndrome, as it were. So that's cool to hear that you're still like cycling through characters and like discovering things. So yeah, that's nice to hear. But Zarya,
Yeah,
what
and
about
honestly,
you?
like, just to cap it off, for keeping in mind the fact you've only been playing for like half a year at the most, you've obviously come a long hell of a way, dude. There's
Yeah.
been a lot of improvement in that half a year. I think you've gotten further in that time span that I did in like a year.
Yeah.
So props on that.
Especially
Yeah.
with no fighting game experience too.
Yeah.
Yeah, like going in blind, that's amazing. I had a year on me, and I was like struggling.
Well, I have to be honest. It's because of you, Char, and John, and also Guy. That's the you three are the main reason why I got why I improved so well in this short span of time. Because I kept asking a lot and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. You know, in our for people like kind of unaware in the Discord, we generally try to be very civil, and our discussions for helping new players, especially I like to think myself. I try to help new players in any way I can. I'm sort of known for, if we have a new player into the community, they'll be like, all right, I'm coming in, I'm playing, and they'll play me, they'll play Guy, they'll play some better players, and they'll be like, man, I got my ass kicked, and they'll be like, they a lot of times it's difficult to know where to start in OMK, which is actually kind of a topic we'll be touching on a little later as well. But there's a lot of strategic layers in OMK. There's a bar for your partner, and you have to use your partner in this game because you gain meter on your partner. There's a guard break, and then there's a timer for essentially like a Roman cancel, or if you play Melty Blood, full moon, whatever. It's
An
initiative.
initiative.
And yeah, initiative heat. So, yeah, Roman cancels the other term, but yeah, stuff like that. There's like a timer for doing that, but it's also opposed by your enemy. So you have like all these things that it's very interactive because there are different ways to bring in your character that you have to do. You have to do one of them, or else you're just gonna lose like completely. I don't think I could solo beat like a majority of players. Maybe someone who's newer, but there's no way otherwise because you just don't get meter. And when meter gives you like cancels like that, it's so important. So I think like anyone who's coming in, even if you're like a really good fighting game fundamentalist, you can just lose because you don't understand the strategic layer of OMK. So
There's so much going on. Unless you actually like have some sort of basis on at least the bare minimum of everything, you're just gonna get overwhelmed. There's no other way around it.
Oh,
Show
yeah.
someone this game, and they see like 5 flashing gauges, and they're gonna throw their controller at the wall.
oh yeah, for sure.
Like guaranteed.
And again, I can't emphasize the forced, like, in a lot of fighting games, they'll be like, okay, well, yeah, you have a meter, do an EX move at the end of your thing to tack on a damage and better setup. But in this game, it's like, no, if I'm doing a combo with Lucy and Cannon, for example, my main team, the difference between a proper setup combo would be like Lucy goes in and gets maybe 1.3k, compared to if I neutral tag Lucy out, and this is a bit cherry picky, I will admit. If I neutral Lucy out for the extra ability, confirm on Cannon, then go back into Lucy, and then re-meta, and then attack touch again, the difference between those two combos of having a 1.3k combo versus having a 3.4 or 3.5k combo in a game where a lot of characters, their health bars are generally around like 9,000-ish, I think that's fair to say, between two characters. Or no, it's closer to 6, right?
Ayuna.
Yeah, Zarya's a big numbers guy. I'm not sure what
Yeah.
health is.
That's true.
I had to look at something. What was the question? I'm sorry, I zoned out.
Oh, it was just the general like health of like characters.
Average health is like 1.4k per character, 2.8 per bar.
Yeah, so the health is a little weird, but essentially that'd be like over a bar of health on a majority of characters, right?
Basically, if you're dealing 3k, it's a third of your total life bar in a round. Yes.
Yeah. So and that's a big difference. That's a difference between I have to win effectively 8 sequences of combos with Lucy on that team versus winning 3.
Yeah.
And if you even if you're a god, it's really hard to just outplay someone on that kind of ratio of I need to outplay you 8 times, you need to outplay me 3 times. By the way, that's why the top tiers are the best, because they touch you twice and you lose.
Facts.
Anyway, so yeah,
Later.
to get back onto our original topic, right, about like our teams and whatnot. So it sounds like you're you're in an era of discovery, George, with George.
Yep.
George being the core, the centerpiece. If you had George is like the really nice statue you bought, then you're arranging your whole house and your furnishings around like, yeah, it all needs to work with George, dude. If it doesn't work with George, get that shit out of here. But what?
I mean, what does work with George? I mean, really, like.
Well,
But, yeah.
I could have some insight on that.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get into that, I'm sure. Why not right now? How does George work? Like, what? Zariat, let's just real quick. What do you play?
So, if I main Beatrice George, it's been my main team since I picked up the game again in Ogon Cross.
Mm-hmm.
For one simple reason. I win through boredom. My combos last forever, and I don't let you play the game.
Oh yeah.
If you know like the timeout strat from other fighting games where you zone people out, like okay, or I basically do timeout infinites without the infinite part. I optimize my combos for maximum length, minimum damage, and I just win off of that. So, like you were saying, how do you make George work? This is exactly why I play this team specifically. I play Beatrice point, George second. Beatrice lands a few hits. She gets a bar on George. Okay. Any attack into attack touch into George doing 2C, 6C is a guaranteed stun and 3.2k, and I have like 2 bars on Beatrice again. And there's nothing you can do about it because guess what? You can't switch.
Yeah, George has some shortcomings for sure, but one thing he has is everyone has like a dash forward and do an attack. I know it's something in a lot of fighting games, but it's a universal mechanic. We call them level 2s or whatever, SP2, but generally level 2 is kind of the term we've taken. So yeah, George has a unique thing where he charges into them and then makes it so they can't burst or use their partner in any way for I think it's 10 seconds, right?
5. I wish it was 10.
Oh really? I thought
It would actually make him good. I know.
Huh? I always thought it was 10.
No, see.
Like detachment.
To explain, SP2s or level 2 supers usually just run forward, hit someone. Oh, you dealt. I think it's exactly 645 damage. So about a 6 of a life bar. Nothing special. George's is different in that it deals exactly 0 damage, but forces a restand, which lets you get longer combos off of it, way more than just the 650 damage, and it prevents the opponent from using their partner for 5 seconds, which prevents burst. It prevents if you somehow reset them and make them block, they can't guard touch out, etc. On paper, it's a broken-ass move, but it's on George.
Yeah, that's the kicker there.
The fact that the lockout is so short makes it useless for what I initially intended for the team to do, which is basically off of anything. Like I said, George just gets a free SP2, which lets him re-extend his combos. If that lockout were slightly longer, 2 detachment levels, 10 seconds, you'd actually get some pretty insane stuff off of it. Because, like, instead of continuing the combo, you just purposely reset them. Dash close 5C for an overhead, or dash close 5C 2C for a low, or just fuzzy them, dash them into the corner, whatever.
Yeah, that's George's biggest shortcoming, I think, is he does have a decent pressure game with 2C being plus, but a lot of times, if things start to get hairy, it's like 2B, 2C, guard touch the 2C, and you're out. And you might not get the most optimal punish, and you have to spend a meter to do it. But, it's better than letting George kind of initiate that game plan that you're talking about. So, yeah, that's always been his shortcoming. But again, if you have the mechanic where you hit the level 2 and then reset them, that would make it work a lot better. I didn't know the lockout was only 5. Because 5 is
Yeah.
enough to finish your combo, but not enough to do like any pressure. So
Yeah. So basically, since I saw that George could do this, and I was like, okay, I want to try doing this in a match. I went through everyone else in the roster, saw who worked, who I could throw in to help accomplish that goal. I saw Beatrice had Infinity SP, and that was it.
yeah, it's the name of
Like-
her ability. For those who don't know.
Yeah, her ability basically makes it so that you get a free super, which includes level 2s. So I effectively only need 1 bar to spend 3, which makes the team very fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something. Old Beat Rice is pretty interesting for that ability in general. So I definitely agree with you when I'm thinking about, okay, how would I make a George work? That's it, right? Like, level 2 is like the number one thing that if you look at George and think, what does this character do? It's like,
Level 2.
you have some pressure game, your ability sucks, your neutral's actually bad compared to other characters. And then you look at level 2 and like meta parry, but even Rono does better meta parrying. So it's like, yeah, well, this level 2, this is a... I'm very much a man who will construct a team simply with, well, this one thing seems good, and can I do that better on someone else? And if I can, I tend to sway away from, I don't want to say character love, but I look for effectiveness first and foremost, and it just so
Right.
happens that Cannon and Lucy are just the most effective at running up and hitting people and causing pressure. So
That's how it should work. You have an idea, how do I execute it the best? That's usually how team building goes.
yeah, and you know, there's a nice layer of strategy, you know, and because we have that deeper strategic layer than most fighting games. We also tend to have more deeply constructed teams. I know that, you know, maybe if some people play like Marvel, they'll be like, oh, well, there's a lot of depth to Marvel. Well, sure, in the neutral and actually playing, but the strategic layer is usually like, I have a character that has a good assist, and I use that good assist with my other 2 characters. Or in MVC 3, Infinite or whatever, or not Infinite.
Yeah, no, but I was going to say, like, tell me where the strategy is in running specifically Zero May Cry. You have the broken character and 2 characters that let you do that with their assists.
Yeah, and are also broken themselves.
Yeah.
So it's not that there isn't that layer of, oh, what do I want on my team and what assist. It's just more of a an
One
OMK.
different point, like, if we can call it that. Like,
Yeah.
the strategery is still there. It's just applied differently.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, you know, obviously it's my bias showing here, but I do know that, or at least I think that OMK's strategy is more thoughtful. Like, there's more things to consider at the very least.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So-
I agree with that.
Because there's an ability and all the different meters and the way they interact with each other and how the characters interact with each other, not just through like a flat-out ability, but other things. For example, that Beatrice character, she gives someone the ability, whenever you activate meta or a neutral tag, to just do anything for free in terms of anything way that you would spend a meter outside of a meta declaration, you can just do. So that's pretty cool, but not every character has something like that works, and not every character has things that work with her just in terms of the fighting game, dare I say, just like the neutral, the confirming into the things she wants to do and how she brings people in. Some characters just won't do that, and some characters don't get a lot off of meter. For example, Lucy, all of her specials are just like jokes, basically, and don't do anything. Even her level 2 is like, well, I have an attack touch, maybe I should just do that. So
Yeah, like, what do you do on her with? Like, Rekka Ender?
no,
Sometimes?
that knocks them down and stops your combo, and you almost always want to use attack touch. So
Yeah, assuming you have no meta declares or attack touches left.
see, at what situation do you have a meta declare? Or, no meta declare or attack touches, but have Beatrice's ability, because usually you need to meta declare to get it, which
Fair,
means
fair.
which means that you probably already have your own ability. So even
Fair.
even just giving something to her for free is like she doesn't need that shit. She's so anyway, and her moves suck. That can be its own fucking topic I could talk about for hours if I had to. But so yeah, I think that team construction is Beatrice is probably the best way to do it. Guy has made the idea of Renove.
I played a lot Renove George at the first. It worked quite well at that time.
Well, yeah. What do you think of George Renove as like a as an option? You know.
I never thought about the depth. I only played Renove because he was a cool guy, and I thought that that you can just basically get not hold on. That I think it was like a good because in my opinion, the one of the weakness of George is that if he gets pressured, he's basically dead. So if you manage to like court touch to run away, he has pretty good options to like deal with it, like that rose cutter reversal or possible parry shields and stuff like that. You can somewhat deal with that pressure. I know it's not very practical maybe, but it's not something what works with me usually.
Yeah, sometimes it's important to just find something that works for you. You know, when like you're starting out, even if you think, man, I know that if I just played this better, I wouldn't have to rely on the Renove defensive options like you're saying. But it's like, well, even though I am relying on them, it's getting me by against, you know, this John asshole who's hitting me all the time. So I think there's merit to that, right? Like, definitely.
See, I don't really think that the team plays off of, like, I don't think the two characters play off of each other very well. A guy will disagree. I think he says that counter boost on George is actually insane. But
Guy likes it for the way Guy plays, you know, because that colors your perspective. Like, if you are so used to having counter boost, and you're like, all right, in these situations where I'm pressuring people, oh, I get that counter hit. I'm gonna try to get situations where my counter hit is the most effective. And then now it's just like he'll play those same situations like, okay, this is a situation where if I counter hit, I'm effective. Fuck, I don't have Rono on my team. Fuck, I just hit him and counter hit him with my meta on, and I only did 300 damage instead of 600 to 700. What the fuck is this shit, right? Like, that's just how he is. So anyway, I'm sorry. Continue.
So, like, that's just, I don't think the team, like, the characters work off each other very well. However, I do admit that it is possibly the single best team you can use if you want to make your opponent feel like shit. Because it doesn't matter who's out. If they press a button and you meta declare and they can't contest it, they're getting countered. Let me tell you, nothing sucks more than getting countered all match.
Oh, yeah.
But it has good thing. It insta-stuns burn. If you can manage it insta-stuns burn, and she deserves it, in my opinion.
Yeah, Ava, Lucy, Erica, Burn,
And George.
Of course, George. They all get stunned by that. There might be other characters because sometimes there's a bit of finickiness.
It's those four specifically.
Yeah, so
those four specifically get stunned instantly.
I think Rono. That's why I give Rono the S tier, because he shuts down those characters in a very unique way. I mean, not necessarily Burn, because Burn has other ways that poop on Rono so hard, but other things are are nice about it. But yeah, I do think the only problem I have with Guy's team is it pretty much means that you have to get, if you're focusing on George's strengths, you get George with a meter. No, who cares? That doesn't work. You need George to have 2 meter. So you have to bring in George with 2 meter, and then you also have to make sure you have enough time to go to Rono, and Rono at least has 1 meter. So you're basically having to win the meta declaration war, which again, you need an meter advantage to do, but you also end up needing to have enough of a level 2, and of course the right combo that's in situation occurring on point. In practical reality, right? Because it's like, it's really fun to get stuck in this strategic layer of OMK, like, oh man, I'm going to do 2 George level 2s and then 2 Rono meta supers for, 5.7k damage, and it's like, well, how are you going to meta declare? You realize that what you're saying is you have to have more meter than whoever's on point, and you also have to spend 4 meter on George. So you need to basically have a fuck ton on Rono, and then a fuck ton on George, and win the neutral. So it's like
The team is very meter hungry, and it needs meter on Rono to build the meter for George.
yeah, that's exactly it, right? It's like once you get to that point, I think there is something to be said for that strength, that huge knockout 4.7k or however more it is of damage you're doing. But golly,
You deserve it. Goddamn, getting there is a hassle.
yeah, it really is.
True.
I kind of like to think of that as like you have your theoretical best and then you have your practical best. Because, you hear about like, oh, they designed this tank, it could take this shot or do this, but then something weird happens and it's like, yeah, when it got on the battlefield, its engine just fucking lit fire and its track sunk into the ground because it weighed like 50 tons. Sorry? I didn't hear that.
Because it was too heavy.
Yeah. It's like it's the perfect tank, but it's too fucking heavy, and its tracks just dig into the mud. And then, when it's just standing there, it's like, oh yeah, I guess if you shoot me from the front, but then they're like, hey, that tank that's fucking broken down and its engine's on fire, guess what? Let's shoot it from the side a little. And it's like, oh, fuck. But the tank was theoretically the best, right? And it still has those positive traits, but there's that practical reality of, okay, there's a Kennen and Lucy constantly hitting me and forcing me to burst occasionally and drain my meter and get more meter than me. And it's like, oh yeah, well, man, once I land this thing I have planned, I'm really gonna fucking beat you. And I feel like Guy definitely, he doesn't rely on that. That's the thing. And I feel that that's the, he just plays George well, and then he plays Rono well. But I agree with you in terms of the synergy. I don't see it. As much as if you point to the Beatrice.
I think that's it. He plays both characters well, and that carries him a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's what's happening.
Yeah.
I think other thing, at least for me with that Runaway George team, is that I think it sucks against zoners. For some reason, it might be because I suck, but as both, like at least for me, against any zoner, I have like really hard time if I play George or Runaway. The Runaway, because he's so slow and his shields take some time to use. Plus, I'm really bad at doing half circle inputs with keyboard. And at George, maybe because he has because he needs to be so close, and he's not very that fast as well. At least for me, that's zoners are like one thing which are really really good against Runaway George team.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I didn't. That doesn't come up a ton with me because I dabble in different characters, but like I said, my main three, Ken, Bat, Lucy. But I do play as others like zoners. I love 410, even though she's not great. She's not bottom tier, but she's one above bottom tier. And I love her, right? But she's not great. But yeah, I definitely see what you mean. Ronove, despite having these supposed tools to deal with zoning, he has like a dodge that can move him forward or back or stand still. And he has a shield he can put up. But the shield doesn't work against every projectile. His speed is limited, so yeah.
The shield doesn't work against the projectiles that matter, which effectively makes it useless.
Mm-hmm. 410 can actually shoot her arrows so that they loop around and hit him in the back. That's great. I love it. But so yeah, I could definitely see those shortcomings. The neutral game, I think, in general, not just for zoners, right, but to kind of expand on that, the neutral game for the way Guy wants to play George and Rono, it's like, well, who's running in and getting the hit? It's like George's neutral isn't great, and Ronove's neutral is a good stand your ground or defensive, I kind of want to say. But it's not exactly like the jump in and just start hitting people and open them up with an attack touch. Not that that's impossible, but he just kind of forces it out. He'll do metas, and then because both characters can parry. So, So I think that that kind of. I mean, unless anyone had anything else to say about like the synergy there, I think we agree. Beatrice is kind of the strategic, like. The theoretical, this is George's best partner, but
I always thought about Leah. I mean, practically because of they're both abilities and that Hold on, I was thinking about this long time ago that Leah and George will be a good team. I have played few times, but I didn't like think about it. But I had a thought that Leah George would be a good team. I'm not really sure anymore.
It's the kind of thing where on paper it sounds like it'll work because you're basically playing the Great Wall of China. You're standing still and getting meter for it. Either because Brimful is up and you're getting fragility ability and you're getting meter for it, or you're actually blocking like a wall and getting meter because of patience. Like, the team does a thing that no other team in the game does. I build a lot of meter for my point character. Worth noting, because only Brimful and Patience do this in the whole game.
That's true, yeah.
But what do you do with it?
Well, I think the team works, but it's the same thing I've said about the reason I like Cannon. It's mostly his ability and his speed for moving. But the bad thing about playing Cannon for his speed and also his ability is that you have to play Cannon. And that's the same. You have to deal with just Cannon being Cannon. Whereas I feel that idea is still true for Virgilia. Virgilia can come in and do damage.
Virgilia's great, but you have to play Virgilia.
Yeah, it's.
Like, come on.
And I think if you can only bring Virgilia in when you want to bring her in, Virgilia can shine. She actually does do a fair amount of damage, and she tends to be a good reserve. You bring her in, and then she meta declares and does her stun and her Brimful. That I think if you play that so that you end your cycle with either a very strong pressure game, or you neutral out for another Brimful on, say, George in this case, and then you just kind of sit there, I think that's the way to play Virgilia. But if you don't play her that way, or something gets thrown, a monkey wrench thrown into your game, Virgilia is not the kind of girl that improvs. She works on a fucking schedule, right? Like,
Right.
You need to have her where she wants to be. If you like burst Virgilia in, or she gets into a bad pressure situation, you have, despite having good normals, her anti-air game is so bad and slow. And most of the time in OMK, if someone's just jumping at you, you can jump up and hit them with a move. But Virgilia is one of the only characters in this game that can't do that. Her jump A isn't active. Her jump is super floaty and super fucking slow. And all of her other air normals are very slow in general. And like her anti-air options, she has a thing where she can set it on the ground, but you have to wait, I think, half a second or a second, and then you can trigger it. But you can't do that when you're under pressure, right? Like, so if you can get around those things, Virgilia is suddenly great. But it's again that practical situation of. Again, I know a little about tanks, especially lately. There was this idea that a lot of the American tanks didn't actually have guns that could penetrate certain vehicles, German vehicles. But the thing is, if you just shoot the shit out of some tanks, like if you have 3 or 4 weaker tanks just pounding against someone's stronger tank, you kind of just beat them into submission almost, and it's like yeah,
It will crack.
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, our tank is just shaking the whole fucking time. We can't aim. You get a viewport. Something like that happens, right? And it's like, oh, well, this, practically speaking, this works. Even though theoretically, again, I kind of think of the George Rono team. Theoretically, this doesn't really do much. But practically speaking, you just get parried. You get a few better situations with George. And if you can, guess what? You have that 4.7k level 2 into double Rono stun combo, if you can get it. So, whereas Virgilia is very much that. In the lab, this theoretically looks amazing. Gosh, this tank is just going to bounce all those darn German shots, and it has a gun for just punching right through them. There's nothing that could possibly go wrong with this, right? And then it gets stuck in the mud.
Too heavy.
It's just theoretical. I know there's no American tanks that did that. But, that idea of that, it's an interesting thing in OMK to balance that practicality with the supposed theoretical way of playing. So, well, I think we kind of covered those teams. If I could interject with this theoretical idea for just a moment, I feel that the Kennen and Lucy team I play as is kind of my version of that. Yeah, on paper this really isn't that great most of the time. practically speaking, you think, okay, well, so Cannon has this ability that the more you hit them, the better it is. So do your big long combo with Cannon's silent attack as much as you can. But then you think, well, Lucy attack touches, so she gets rid of that. So you go and hit them, meta declare, and then whoever meted has that, and then you attack touch, and then attack touch again. And it just feels like, well, a majority of the damage wasn't done with silent attack, so that's kind of yucky. Neither of them are big damage characters. I think Lucy is a unique character in that she kind of adds damage to anyone that can stand in combo. And she also is like a neutral character, so that's cool. You don't see a lot of characters that kind of do that. Except for like the really good ones, like Burn and Ronove defensively at least, as well as Will, but they're broken. So, but it has that practical approach where they can both neutral to each other for a good effect, and suddenly, if you do ever get the neutral, you have an attack touch, an extra attack touch on your combo if it lands, or pressure, and if you do silent attack, and you get a confirm. Well, a majority of your damage right when you start the match, or start the combo, is silent attack, which is where the most comes in. So that silent attack lowers, or gives you more meter advantage, and then you meta declare, and then, a majority of the middle of your damage is also silent attack, and then you dash cancel, keep the silent attack going for a little less damage. And suddenly only the end of your combo isn't silent attacked. So it's like, well, this actually does work sometimes. And in terms of practicality, from a neutral standpoint, I just play them both very well in neutral with pressure, that I don't necessarily need to rely on something like that to make them work. So it has a lot of layers of things that can potentially work. Here's potentially double silent attack, double attack touch combos, but also if you just land a regular combo, you're still getting something out of it with like dash attack. And stunning someone and then going... with that team, I've gotten my combos to the point where I can stun someone, and then if I stun with Cannon, and assuming I land the meta super, I always can neutral back to Lucy and have the rest of the combo that I end with have silent attack, and also a pressure situation with it. And likewise with Lucy. If Lucy stuns, I go to Cannon, who then ends his combo with Oki and an attack touch. So it's like, oh yeah, this works, like... You're definitely front-loading a lot of situations that all you need to do is have the meta declaration and you win.
Like I've always felt like that's a big part of like the meta of, weird to call it that, like the meta of the game in general is just who gets the first bar and who uses it the best in any given match, really.
Oh yeah, definitely. Except for Jessica and Burn and Will.
You were mentioning all this, and I actually noticed to add something that I have never bothered to test or ask before. How do dash cancels and attack touch, the ability, interact? If I have attack touch active, but my touch gauge is disabled, can I dash cancel?
No.
Okay.
But yeah, if your bar is disabled, then you can attack touch. Because it's funny, if you get detached, you can still attack touch.
Yeah, your team counters Rosa. That's a blessing.
It seldom comes up, but yeah, it does, definitely. Sometimes I can just meta declare, and Rosa players are like, no, you must stay detached, and they spend their 2 meter, and I'm like, yeah, okay, it's fine. So it's funny, because a lot of times you can do meta to sort of like threaten something, either with your abilities or you get a confirm and then do it and say, well, I'm going to keep comboing you unless you stop this, so it forces that meter to be spent. Alright, well, it seems like we have beaten this topic to death, or beaten this horse to death or whatever. So, the third thing we ended up having on our list here, we kind of covered the first two. Well, on this list, Zara, maybe you should read it here.
How do we introduce this topic? Okay, so if you've been around in the Discord or on the old IRC, you've probably heard this already, or if you somehow heard the last podcast, John has gone on record multiple times. You've been playing Ogon for how long now?
I think about 6 or 7 years.
6 or
Somewhere
7 years. You played Multi before that for a period of time as well, correct?
Yeah, I played for a good 2 or 3 years, I think, before then.
Please explain to me how in the fuck you've gone on record multiple times saying that you actually despise fighting games. And I quote, "Fighting games suck, don't play fighting games," says the guy who's been playing the exact same fighting game for 6 years.
Oh,
This is not directly tied into OMK, but I'm just way too curious to let this pass up. Please. I don't understand. Help me understand, man.
Okay, so you have to look firstly at. I could explain. There's two ways we can approach this. I can do both if you'd like. The first one is.
What are those two ways? Yeah.
The first one is.
You have a fighting game aficionado right here. I love fighting games. I will fight you over this. So.
Okay. So the first thing is, well, why are these two games an exception? And then the second point, I think, is why do I think fighting games suck? So we can do both of those.
Let's do the first one first, because I think I know where those answers will go.
Okay, so yeah, well, I mentioned Tsukihime, and
right, you read a novel, so you played Multi-Blood. That one makes sense.
Yeah, and I was like, at first, there's just like a Multi-Blood. Everyone walks around very slowly, but walking around isn't how anything is ever done in that game. So. I was immediately.
Just run.
Yeah, I played Miyako because she was the only character that had like a fast walk speed, and I was like, yeah, look at this 2C, pow, I'm gonna knock dudes down, I'm the best, and I was like, that was the majority of my game plan, and then eventually I learned more about the game, and I, came across Chaos, and I'm like, wow, look at these big moves, this is awesome, so I stuck with Chaos, and. It was then that I started to realize the flaws of fighting games. I've played. Some people laugh at one of these, but I played 3 games competitively my whole life, pretty much since teenage year. These 3 games are my good friends will know this. The first one is StarCraft Brood War. The second game is a game called Ragnarok Online, which more
not as respectable.
It has a lot to it. Pre-renewal, if you ever played pre-renewal.
Okay.
There's a lot to it. It's a Korean MMO with a lot of depth. And this was before MMOs kind of became. It's an old game as well. So that was back when games were willing to kind of do their own thing and have something unique to them without just being a fucking point A to point B. Yeah, point A to point B. Look at my numbers get better, but the mechanics almost never really change. Haha. Ragnarok was very much a game where if at level 1 you could figure out mechanically how to kill things, there wasn't just like, this thing's level 30, so you do 50% less damage to it. It's like, no, you always do the same amount of damage. And if you could somehow get your level 1 character to kill a high EXP monster, you would just gain a level per thing, which is very uncommon nowadays. It fucking sucks, so... Anyway, so the game has a lot of depth to it and a lot of interesting interactions between stuff. It's very Dota-esque, I would say. And then the other one that those who played Diablo 2 in PvP would understand the intensity of it. There's a lot of... It's very similar to fighting games in that the game runs on animations. So whenever something gets faster, it gets a frame faster. So you start getting to this point where it's like, oh, well, I have 20% cast rate, but if I have and that doesn't matter. But if I have a 21% cast rate, then I go from an 18-frame cast to a 17-frame cast. If I have
makes all the difference. Yeah.
Yeah. If I have a 100% cast rate, I go from the 18-frame cast to a 12-frame cast. So you start getting all this crazy shit where you're like, all right, this character has this many frames in their cast, this character has that many frames in their cast. I kind of want to have this casting time for this. If you're playing a caster, I'm talking a lot about casting because that's what I play. And there's a lot of
there's like frame data here to know for matchups. Is what you're getting at.
Yeah, in essence. And how you want to build your character. Because it's possible to be like, I'm willing to take less frames to have an extra 400 life in the game. And that's fucking so unique. You don't have that like in a fighting game, you can't really make your own characters. You just have a set ones, right? You can't be like, I want my 2B to be slower on Lucy, but I would like to have Beatrice's ability. Because there's no like really way to discern what's powerful. I think is why you don't have that system. So these are the three.
Thank God.
Yeah, definitely. But these are like the three games that influenced me the most. With Brood War being the biggest emphasis, I think. But when I look at a fighting game in Melty, I was playing against Akiha Vermilion and also Red Arc, and if you don't know anything about the game, those two characters are very hard for Chaos, as well as CL was the other third one. And in Brood War, there are things that, in some matchups in 1v1ing, people can do things to that are kind of hard. Like Terran have to hold Dragoon pressure, and Reavers and Dark Templars. Zerg have to hold Terran pushes and potential like Vulture and Wraith sneaky stuff. Protoss have to hold potential Zergling pressure and Muta pressure. But it always feels like there's some give and take, like, oh, you do this early on and that's good for you early on, but it stops being as good later on, and then I become stronger later on. Whereas in fighting games, you have that. They got the part of someone bullies you. Like if you ever played Chaos against a CL, you will never feel more bullied in your entire life. Like, it's the worst thing ever. She just shoots all this stuff at you that like knocks you down. And then her dash has clash frames on it so that even if your one panic move, the Mantis Claw, will actually clash against CL's dash for some odd reason. And at any point she can use her EX hit anywhere on the screen move for any of your like big moves. So you're like, I'm gonna put down a snake. And she's like, Shoshima no. And it's like, oh no, this sucks. So I thought, okay, now what do I get for this? Nothing. I don't get anything. That's the joke. I get nothing. Whereas in Brood War, usually there was give and take. If you chose to have a slower cast speed, again in Diablo 2, you get something. In Ragnarok, if you chose to get like 100 vitality on your character, you have 100% health modifier, but you're giving up something else. Whereas here, I'm just thinking, hey, this character just kind of shits on me. Well, this doesn't make any sense. This is dumb. Is there
So, your entire stick, your problem with fighting games, is that the concept of a bad matchup exists.
Yes, but
Because the state of a game does not involve path character select.
Yes. In a lot of these games, you can also alter your composition. So let's say you have an entire team of the aforementioned 100 vitality characters, and in Ragnarok there's a character that, however many points you click the vitality button on your character sheet, they basically get like 200 extra damage against you. So there's a funny thing where against that one character, it makes more sense to actually never click that vitality button on your character sheet. And there are some characters that function incredibly well without having clicked that button, and those are the characters that give that class the hardest time. So you end up having this nice cohesion of, well, there are big tough guys who are good at dealing with everything except me, and then there are characters that I can't deal with, but everyone else deals with them. And there's a lot of give and take, like, oh, I have a strength, I have a weakness, I have 100 life, I take everything except that one guy. And the guy that who does that, they have single target, right? And it's like, well, I can't deal with a swarm of guys, and it's also ranged, which has its own unique set of reductions and stuff that work in RO. So it's like, yeah, this makes sense. Give and take. Okay. But there's no give and take in a lot of fighting games. When you pick Chaos, the tools you're given, that's it. There's nothing like, early game I'm going to rush him and try to beat some of his workers up. Or I'm going to do a certain harass and be in and out, bob and weave. Some characters can do things like that. Most can't. And the reason I actually stuck with OMK to kind of compound on this is that if you have a bad matchup, like let's say you have a Lucy against Rono, which if Rono has a meter advantage, or the ability to declare, as we said before, Rono can parry you and stun Lucy and then go into his crazy combo. So that's amazing. That's like, holy shit, how do you approach this guy? It's always a risk, basically. So with that in mind, right, that thing that's always a risk, OMK is one of the unique fighting games where you can gain strength or gain an advantage by having positional awareness and doing something other than directly fighting. Because in Brood War, you don't always have to directly fight someone to get a lead. You can take an expansion and get money and be defensive. There's other certain things in other games, it's a little loose, but in Diablo 2, a Blizzard sorceress can put down like an area of Blizzard. And then you can camp in there, and then put down an area of Blizzard, and then teleport to it. And you can say that, even though I can't directly engage you, I can always put this thing down, and then maneuver around it to fight you. And there, you would say that, oh, well, Chaos can do that, he puts down a thing. Fuck you! You've never had a seal throw shit at you! You've never had an EX blast across the screen. You've never had an Akiha Vermilion just like double air dash at you and cuck you so hard before like your snake is barely like on the ground, right? It's like there's that idea of strategy. Oh, put thing out, be good. But there are characters that can stop that before it even happens. And I think that always left a sour taste in my mouth for those kinds of games, is that there
are some things that are just not winnable, basically.
And there's no way to kind of better your situation, because I'm okay with the fact that Protoss against Zerg in Brood War is large early game. The Zerg has all the initiative. The Zerg can cheese you, the Zerg can bust you with Hydras, Lings, Mutas. I'm okay with that period existing. I'm okay with that mechanic of I have to be careful. But there's no complex evolution of, oh, well, okay, Seal, you're kicking my ass from the start of the game, but once I get to full meter, I can put out an EX Deer and rush you down. No, you can just still do those same advantages, right? Whereas in Brood War, that doesn't happen. As kind of the parallel example, I'd like to say.
Not what I was expecting as an answer, honestly. Like, at all. Usually when people say that they don't like fighting games, it's because of the inherent grind to them. You can't just say, oh, I want to play a fighting game, I want to be good at the fighting game. You hop online, and you're not going to double perfect someone on your first match.
Oh, no.
Like, you have to do your homework. You have to go to the lab, find your characters, find your combos, practice your combos until you can do them on both sides, improve those combos, figure out what your good buttons are for neutral. You understand where this is going. It's a lot of work. It's effort.
Yeah, and all that has nothing to do with actually engaging the other player either.
Yes, more often than not, whenever I hear people say, I don't like fighting games, or fighting games suck, they're stupid, you're just button mashing to see who can hit buttons the fastest.
No.
It's because they can't wrap their heads around the point of, this is work, this is effort. In a way, I'm glad it's not the case for you, but also, I think your reasonings are kind of bullshit.
Okay, I loved hearing why I'm bullshit.
Your whole point is, it's basically what I said. There's no more evolution to the match past character select. I pick my character, you pick yours. That's our tools. That's all we get. There's no dynamic. I don't have early game, you don't have late game. It's just a game.
Mm-hmm.
So a character is always going to be, in the Nero Seal matchup, as an example, you're always going to get shit on because she can throw projectiles at you, or she can just EX Hero from full screen to punish your anything. And, that's just how a bad matchup works. Your tools are good, yeah, but they're not good versus this character. So you have to stop using those tools and use others, or potentially even switch characters. I don't think you have to do this in OMK very much because you're one of our best players in general, and because you play your team very solidly, but and because OMK itself doesn't, the dynamics of the game themselves don't really lead to this concept of, oh, my character has a bad matchup against his character, so I'm going to switch. That's not usually the case. I don't think there are any cases in Ogon that have that happen. Which in part is, I think, why you stuck with OMK for so long. Because you don't have to switch characters.
Well, I mean, it's funny, right? 'Cause I know the verbiage you're using is at character select, but OMK literally has a way where you hit a button and you switch a character in the game. Like, you have two characters, right? So
see, I don't agree with that mentality because the way I see it, Ogon gives you 19 options, but let me open up the calculator real quick because I actually don't know off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do Triangle Edition? Fucking. How many different team combinations are there?
Yeah, well, there's 19 characters, you said, right?
19 characters, so it'd be like...
Times 18, right? Because you can't have the... Oh, no, it would be different, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be different. Yeah, like, basically, you're looking at some... Actually, no, because the same team can be ordered differently.
Yeah.
So it'd be... fucking hell. You're looking at roughly like 500 to 600 teams if my guesstimate isn't off.
Yeah, well, yeah, either way, the idea, regardless of your math, the idea is that you have a lot of different teams.
Yes, and in the way I look at Ogon, you don't have 19 characters, you have that ridiculous number of teams. And you don't, those are what matter.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, if there was, like you say, that's very likely the reason I stuck to this game for so long is because, like I said, I'm willing to hold Seal bullying my chaos. Like, that's not my issue. Like I said, Brood War I've been bullied. RO has a lot of ways to bully people. Diablo 2 definitely has ways to bully people if you start PvPing a lot. But
the difference is you get bullied at specific points, and there's counterplay to it if you play smart.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, like, let's say I decide to, like, for example, I played a Lucy and Virgilia team, and I just accepted the fact that if Virgilia gets jumped on, that's hard. That's hard. That's difficult. She is the chaos in the Seal matchup, except worse in that situation if someone jumps on her.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. But the thing is, I have some control. Whereas if you just had the game where it's like, I pick Virgilia versus Lucy. Oh my god, what would even happen? She would just die. It's so terrible. Like, Virgilia against Lucy, you would lose. Virgilia against Ava, burn. Will, Erica, Badler, Lucy, Lambda.
Well, the entire
Rosa,
roster, except Shannon.
Well, no. There's some in there that I think she has an okay match against. As in, not awful. But those characters specifically that I mentioned, Shannon as well, even. Actually, Angie. They all would just, like, bully her to no end. But you would get strengths for that. So yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents, I guess, is they literally built that mechanic into the game. So I'm okay with it. Just give me an option beyond, I guess I go to character select and pick a different character. Because then that just means that you produce something in the game that's not viable for winning. Whereas in OMK, you can always say, well, Leah isn't good, John, but like we just said, there's that theoretical awesomeness with George right there we talked about earlier.
Right. See, but the difference isn't necessarily... The thing is, it's not necessarily, oh, you just go to character select because you can't win, period. Like you said, Leah gets she just explodes if people jump in on her with, like, certain characters. Because she does, this is true. But she also does well against others, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the strengths and weaknesses come into play. It's not, but instead of it being, I have my character, like, I didn't play much StarCraft, but I understand the concept of Zerg wants to end the game in 5 seconds, and Protoss wants to end the game in 5 hours. I think my assessment is correct, right?
Well, it at a higher level, it's more so that Zerg can end the game early. And in the same way that Protoss against Terran, Protoss can end the game early, and Terran against Zerg, Terran can end the game early. So it's kind of like you're sitting there with, like, your fists up on your face, like, okay, I could just do a crazy attack at you, but if you're doing a crazy attack at me, very likely that's going to end up better for you as the person in the offensive position early on.
Right. But, like, a single character is just not going to have that much disparity within a single game. But they will have that in the entire roster.
Yeah, but the problem is only for majority of fighting games, and even some of the team-based ones, if we're being honest, there are only 2 characters interacting with each other at any given point.
Correct.
I think that's definitely a shortcoming, and that's why, again, I think OMK is pretty good, because it
You're
circumvents that. Yeah, and it literally, you can't just be like, oh, I'm just playing my one guy with my assist character. Although you can kind of have that mentality of, well, this is my assist character, but there isn't just an assist mechanic. It's like, if you want, if you're saying like what I do with Lucy Virgilia, I'm like, I'm bringing Virgilia in just to stun them, and then I'm gonna sit her there with her bar on, and then I'm gonna do an attack touch after Brimful is mostly done into Lucy. And that's it. That was like the whole point of the team, and it worked. But the thing is, the opponent has the opportunity to interact with Virgilia if they burst out when Virgilia comes in. I could neutral Virgilia out potentially, but that's not always an option. She still has that 10-second timer on attack touch, and she has that point of vulnerability. Whereas in other games, literally the only point of vulnerability in an assist character is you hit them when they're coming out. And then they literally jump off screen. And I feel like OMK doesn't have anything cheeky like that. It's kind of much more straight up of, yeah, you could play that burn as that, because I do that with Lucy Burn as well. I just use burn for a ton of damage and set up and switch her out, and don't play the neutral with her if I can help it.
That's literally how I played George, let's be real.
Yeah, so you can play characters. the spirit of that, I'm using you for something, and that's it, right? I'm bringing the tank destroyer to the front line to shoot the tank, not really to be shot at. It's like, that's the purpose. And I love that. I love that strategy, but from what you're saying, I understand, there's more to it, than just like the two characters interacting. It's the two players interacting in a tournament setting.
Mm-hmm.
But, I've never been a fan of, because that kind of a concept comes up with like Dota drafting and like MOBA stuff, where they talk about, oh, well, part of the draft is like, well, yeah, some characters are just good, but that's part of the strategy. You have your bans, you have your first pick, your second pick, your third pick, and so on and so on. And a guy likes that a lot, but again, I don't find that as interesting. But it is part of the game. It's just that to me, if your argument is, well, then there's the drafting phase of fighting games when you're playing competitively. If that's your argument to me, then I would say still, I don't like that type of. I select the right cards for my deck. I drafted the right heroes in my Dota game. I picked the right champions in League of Legends. I picked the right characters in my fighting game. That's that, especially in casuals. If you have like a passion, like what about George here, right? He loves George, but what if like the reason he plays the game is because he really likes George, or in my case, like Lucy, and that's just like, no, you can't play that. That sucks. Sorry, play something else. It's like, oh wow. I'm looking at the game as a whole experience rather than like my character, and that could be my flaw as well. But yeah, I still think it's a shortcoming in my opinion. But to each their own, right?
Yeah. Gotta say, quite enlightening.
Well, yeah. I think it's interesting. There's just ultimately, yeah. What you're saying is true. It doesn't really go beyond the character select, whereas I guess these other games tend to have some of those mechanics kind of built into them. RO's much more loose. There's not really a match, so to speak, in RO, but there can be like a prolonged conflict. People can switch their characters. You can talk to different people, like literally players in the game, and have different compositions to approach a fight with. And if you're looking at RO competitively, it's the same thing. You can choose the different, like, I think it's like a 7 versus 7 competitive format. If you're looking at that competitive format, you choose those 7 elements, right? In much the same way, I guess you'd say like, oh well, you start the game with one character, but then you kind of go to different ones. Like I mean, I look at like King of Fighters and I see like, oh wow, you picked 3 characters, cool, that's awesome. That means even if you get cucked super hard in a bad matchup, which I don't know if the game has, or KOF 13. Okay, yeah, so you have those in KOF 13. You can potentially, circumvent that, right? Or it's not going to be the end of the world for you. Or you may have a good matchup against someone else who has a very bad matchup against you on the same team, potentially. So you could say, my number 1 gets countered by 10, but 10 gets countered by 20. And I have a number 1 and a 20 on my team, so in case I come across a 10, I counter it if it counters my 1. And so that's like a cool element of strategy, but by and large, Melty doesn't have something like that. Street Fighter doesn't have something like that. So I think that games that are going more towards the direction of multiple characters is a good thing. and that's probably what's going to get me to play other games. Is that I'm gonna play those, if I ever do. I don't know if I will, but
I give them a shot, personally. Like, if I were to go on a slight tangent, kind of, if
sure.
there's something that absolutely carries you, and when I say you play OMK, is that your fundamentals, your neutral game is insanely strong. It doesn't matter what fighting game you're playing, that alone will win you games. Even if you've never played the game in question before. Like, have you ever played Killer Instinct?
No, I've watched a little bit of it with Beat. Beyond that, nothing.
I can guarantee you that against someone, you would do at least decently to well on your first day playing Killer Instinct, specifically because your neutral game is honestly kind of advanced. Same would apply if you ever played Street Fighter V for the first time. Not necessarily anime games like, say, Arcana Heart. I think you get bodied in Arcana, but details. Different games, different complications.
Sure. Well, the thing is, I guess I need something to kind of push me in, OMK had its aesthetics and crazy witch throwing imaginary stakes with imaginary laser swords. And
you were just in it for the laser swords. It's like both of your team members have a laser sword. That's why you play Ken and Lucy.
Oh wow, you're right. Damn. Called out. Holy shit.
You never noticed?
No, I guess I just never really thought of it. Like. Yeah. That's true though. I think it's interesting, man. Wow. I don't know. In the case where I think I could try a fighting game, as long as there's not too much... the other thing about fighting games is I don't mind if you have to sit around and learn an advanced technique, but one thing that's really annoying to me is if, in order to be like competitive, you have to learn a lot of really advanced combos. Like if you had to basically be a Will or a Jessica.
Right.
I'm not. No. If your game requires that, or you're going to be like OMK, which is something we'll actually be getting into in here in a second. If you're going to say that if you do those things, you get a significant advantage, like in OMK, then that's an issue for me. And if I need to do that just to be average, sorry.
Yeah, I can and will agree on that front with you. Fighting games or games in general that put mechanical being able to do a lot of things really fast above understanding how to play the game itself, I think there's an issue. Like, one of the biggest reasons why I never got into, say, Marvel 3 was that, specifically for the characters I wanted to play, there was just way too many inputs, way too much of an execution barrier to learning them, compared to the characters that win by doing 5 buttons. like by the end of its life cycle, the best team in the game was Team KBR, which was freaking Hulk, and I forget the other two, but they were also big bodies, which basically means I don't do a lot in terms of execution. I just hit buttons, and my buttons hit really hard. The game plan was simple, the execution was simple, but it required a deep understanding of the game in order to get somewhere. If fighting games kept it to that in general, I'd be a lot happier.
Yeah.
In that sense, I'm okay with Street Fighter V. I didn't like Street Fighter 4 because of that.
Yeah, I'm a kind of same situation with Street Fighter 5 because it has so many inputs, like 6 buttons and so high execution that it's kind of hard to play like regularly. Because
the 6-button thing is kind of irregular if you're used to Street Fighter.
Yeah.
But the fact that if you want to play any character at a semi-competent level, you need to learn your one-frame links.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind like challenge at all. But I think Street Fighter 4 went a bit too far with it, at least in my opinion. I think in terms of like execution and stuff like that. Like other than that, the game is like little simpler than Golden Fantasia in my opinion. It's the execution which is like much more complicated in Street Fighter when compared to this game, at least in my opinion.
Yeah. Ogon just has a problem of having too many mechanics to be accessible to new players, generally speaking.
But that's why I like this game. That it's kind of simple in that the combos are not really that hard to do. It has like 3 buttons, but everything else is kind of complicated. It's kind of easy to get in, but if you really want to be good or beat Larry or someone, you need actually to study really hard the other mechanics.
The one thing I would say is that we can talk about like in terms of like the 2 things why I think this is okay for OMK, at least in this regard, what you're saying is you say you're playing a Schmied, Schmeid, or Schmor, and you're playing a character that hits them. You do like a 2B, and then you link into a 5B, and then another 5B, and then you link into a quarter circle attack, right? And it's like, oh, if those are all like 1-frame links, let's say, right, theoretically, then you come out of that situation with 400 damage, theoretically. Okay, I don't know Schmied, Schmeid, or Schmor, it doesn't even exist. But in this theoretical Schmied, Schmeid, or Schmor, you have this character that does this. And so you do this and you do 500 damage, and you're like, yeah, 500 damage. And you're asking the player to basically say, okay, well, I'm playing the same character, John, and I landed a 2B, and I got 100 damage, or 200 damage, or whatever. And then I missed the 5B link, and it's like, oh. So now the difference is I do 200 damage to 500 damage. But what's the difference between, look at me, I can do that link for 500 damage? Well, the answer is countless hours in training mode. And that's the issue that I think is it really fun to force that training mode practice? Different opinions may vary. It certainly is more interesting to spectate something like Street Fighter 4, in my opinion, than 5 or Super Smash Bros. Melee, other than Smash 4. And I love watching those games, but I don't want to ever play them. So
Same.
The other thing about that is what would be the harm in, say, just making my 2B do 500 damage, or making my 2B 5B an easier link? There's really not much harm, and you don't really gain anything from the game other than having that spectacle. Whereas when I look at OMK, I think, well, how could you simplify OMK's mechanics in terms of the meter usage, the partner? That's hard.
See,
like,
I don't think you can.
Exactly. That's kind of my point, you know.
The things that make, because like the things that make OMK unique, the things that personally make me keep coming back to this game day after day, even knowing that the game is busted beyond belief, is just that the way every single system, every single mechanic interacts is just so unique, so interesting. I don't think there are any other fighting games out there that do the whole you have 2 characters thing. Well, Marvel 1 does that, so does Marvel Infinite, but in those games you only have 1 stock meter. In OMK you have 2, 1 for each character. And the point character is building it for the assist. Mm-hmm. I don't think any other game has this dynamic. Like, the big thing about Marvel Infinite that made people go like, yo, this is amazing, was the fact that you have active switch. You can, at any point in a combo, call in your assist and start controlling the assist, and you swap at the end. Like, you basically control like the second character while the first one finishes their attack. And then by the end of that character's attack, they switch out, and you start with your assist out. Mm-hmm. That was way complicated to explain something so simple. OMK did this for like 6 years ago. It's called Attack Touch.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And honestly, each of these mechanics, like you could say, oh, well, Attack Touch is just a combo extender and going into your character. No, it's not. It is a 10-second point of weakness that takes no meter. Whereas you could, and it also means that you can't use your other defensive mechanics. Or a 5-second one. I'm sorry, 5 seconds on Attack Touch. Whereas if you guard touch, that's 10 seconds. If you burst, that's 15 seconds. And both of those take meter to bring your partner in, and you're using in a defensive situation. Whereas Attack Touch is an offensive situation, takes no meter.
Guard touch really 10 seconds? I thought it was 8.
I think guard touch is 8 or 9. Attack touch is also 8 or 9. I got confused with neutral touch. Whereas
Neutral is 3 seconds.
yeah, neutral is something like 3 or 4, 3 to 5. I don't know. It's fast. Is the point.
Yeah, it's really fast.
And so it's like, wow. Well, if you bring in your character through neutral touch, it's like you don't really get anything else, but it also doesn't cost anything. Even the opportunity of your character's touch bar to be used again, so you can still use your reserve. And on top of that, to make it interesting, you get the opponent or your on-point character's ability as an incentive. Like, fucking wow. Like, Street Fighter is like, they tried their thing with the gems or whatever.
Let's not talk about Street Fighter Cross Tekken. That was a shit show and a half.
Yeah, but what drew me to that was like, oh, you have some sort of strategic lair. But it's just like a mechanic out of the game, whereas OMK, that strategic lair is built into the game. If you want to use your partner, that's built into the game. You want to use abilities, that's built into the game. You want to just activate your character's abilities, there's a mechanic for that, meta, or neutral tag. But if you're just going to use meta for kidding people, then that's fine too, right? It's like, the important thing is to have tools that do multiple things and aren't, in my opinion, in terms of game design, right, not just having something that goes in one direction. Don't just be like, well, this is just a cancel for canceling your pressure and extending your combo. It's like, no, this is a meta declaration. Oh, that's not very interactive. Okay, so then the other person can cancel it. But if you have more meter, then you have the advantage and can, force meta. Oh, okay. So the opponent will always cancel. Well, what's the point in doing it? Well, it takes more meter for the person who wants that declaration of the meta or to cancel it. It always takes them more. So even if like a person spends 4 meter to cancel it, you spent 30 meter to activate it. So it's like, wow, that's interactive as fuck, right? Like, wow, holy shit, it's not just like a Roman cancel. It's not just a really basic mechanic that they designed for something. Nothing wrong with those mechanics, but it's so much depth. The touch system, so much depth. You can attack touch, you can assault touch, like you can burst touch, you can guard touch, like, and it's all on the same thing. That resource needs to be used for one of those things. You see a player like me, I never use that, and I use that for an explosive attack touch combo to get the most out of it. And outside of Will and Jessica and so on and so on,
the usual offenders, yeah.
Yeah, the game is beautiful in its intricacy, and I think, you are saying, George, oh, well, it's complex. It's kind of hard to approach, and I do understand that. And I do have my sympathies for you. But at the same time, at the very least, it's a system that's like, well, it's a complex system, but you're getting a lot of mileage out of it. It's adding something unique to your game that, as you said, Zara, nothing else adds.
Yeah.
And whereas, again, this Street Fighter 4, while it's fun to watch, I love watching Street Fighter 4 at a high level to some degree. Not as much as like Melee, for example. But I love watching those games at a high level, knowing that this Fox shit is like impossible to do. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with those pursuits. But I'm not going to do that, and most people aren't going to ever get to that level, even though it's fun. And I think OMK generally keeps... It's like, well, actually the fighting game, the practical part that I've kind of made reference to, the real battlefield situation, that's relatively... It's like you're saying, where you have a deep understanding of the game, you're going to do well. It's not about being super complicated. I guess trip guarding can be considered kind of rough. Getting around zero-frame throws can be kind of rough. But once you understand how those things work, it's like, oh, okay. Now I get it. Lucy trip guards me because John is really good at it, And then it's like, okay, well, sure. And it might be hard for you to trip guard, but some characters, I think, by design, are hard to trip guard other people with. It's like, well, George doesn't have those good moves, and he can't really trip guard that easily. So
he's not good at anything, really. Whatever.
So yeah, I mean, and the thing is, it's funny. It's like we just rambled on literally about like OMK's touch mechanic for like 10 minutes, right? and that's just one of the bars, right? We didn't even talk about the meta.
That's basically why I feel like the game for people watching from the outside, it feels so alien, so inaccessible. Like you just said, the card. We only talked about one of the 75 gauges you see on one screen, the touch gauge. That one touch gauge is more complicated than entire fighting games. There's the burden of knowledge for someone coming into the game is so massive that I feel like it's the biggest wall preventing more players from picking this game up and having fun. Like, it's a lot to learn.
Yeah, I think so too. You know,
Sure, when you get into it like we did, it's like, dude, once you understand how these tools work and how to use them, holy shit, this is fucking amazing. But until you get to that point, you're applying your face to the wall repeatedly until either your head or the wall breaks. And let me tell you, walls are hard.
yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Our next topic, I don't know if you did this on purpose, Zara, as a transition, but
I wonder if it was on purpose or not.
But our next topic was that so OMK was a game, or is a game, that feels difficult to start learning, and I wrote down some mechanics as to that, right? Which was like an alpha strike, which is there's no mechanic called alpha strike, right? But it's just that who gets that first meter and brings in their character to use it, as in, you know, the strategic term, getting the first hit and doing damage. Trip guarding, where if someone jumps and lands, they actually have frames where they're recovering. And it's very hard. In OMK, I think it's somewhere between like a 1 to 4 frame. Not even 4, there's no way. It's maybe 1 to 3 frame window.
I think it's a 1 frame window.
It may be, honestly. It feels really tight and hard to do. So there's that mechanic, so that if you jump and land, and there's a character that can put a normal on you as you're landing within that 1 frame, you can't block, and that's something I use to great effect. And then there's team construction, where we talked, again, just about George and his intricacies for who knows how long in the podcast, a good 10, 20 minutes, about just George, right?
It's amazing how, like, in the 2 podcasts you've done so far, I'm pretty sure the single character that has been talked about the most is one of the worst characters in the game. I find that phenomenal.
It's basically because I think, ironically, George is the most main character. Like, I play, Chariot play, Guy plays. I think Beat also has like really great George, but I don't think he mains him. But what I have seen, he has really great George. So I think it's basically because why he's so talked, because so many people play him.
It's kind of amazing, honestly.
Yeah, you're all bunch of fucking George mains. Well, good.
Join the army, John. Come on.
Yeah.
I should look at the George House motives.
Oh, George House. Yeah, George House just means you just pick George, and you don't play another character. It's on point George against an on point George. It's George House.
I like it actually wanted to try out to only play George. Never use any character, so only play George. I like it had that kind of idea when I started this game. I wanted to become famous as player who only plays George, nothing else.
Some people
would like Burn, but not George. I'm sorry.
Some people do that. I know Beat would just play George House, where he just plays nothing but George on point, and you can use both. He doesn't say don't use any characters. He's just like, nope. He just picks George and he fights you, and he usually loses because it's really hard to win this game without all that other character. Yeah. So that's the third thing in the about the game seeming hard to learn, team construction, and then there's efficient use of all of the bars. Like we said, there's the touch bar, and then there's your on-point meter bar, which is used for meta declaration, and then there is a meta declaration timer bar that can be used about halfway when it's done. But if you use it halfway when it's done, you have less time to meta.
Yeah.
And also, if the opponent argues with you, you have less meta time as well. Something not everyone knows. And there's the most simple bar, the guard touch bar. The
often most overlooked one, actually.
Yeah, the guard break bar, basically.
I actually don't know how it works. Like, straight up, it's the one gauge that I do not know the exact specifics of. I'm like the walking encyclopedia for this game. You know this.
It's true, yes.
I don't know the fuck all about the guard gauge. I just know it's pink, it fills up, and I hate getting guard broken.
The main thing to consider is that the more you get guard broken, the harder it is to fill up.
Is that actually true?
Yes.
Have people actually tested this?
Yes, it is. I don't know the value. I'm sure
Does it reset between rounds?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, because like I've never actually seen the whole "it's hard to guard break you after you've been guard broken" thing in play.
Mm-hmm.
It always feels like I get a guard broken in like 2 or 3 Valor EXTPs, no matter when it happens.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, that's the fourth thing on this list about OMK is hard to learn. And then the last two are a little more, not as nuanced, but we no longer have balance patches for this game, even though we could get them, basically.
I can't really say much about that, but we've basically been playing the exact same version of the game since 2011.
Yeah, they could do work on it. I know that much for sure. And whatever, they're not going to. No one expected them to. That's fine. Manga Gamer isn't like a fighting game company, from my knowledge, so whatever. But
we're staying hopeful, and hope's the last one to die. So,
so there's a lack of consistent balance patches. There are none, basically, for being honest.
Yeah.
So you'll kind of just have to hold. We've made reference to those top tiers a few times, and we're going to talk about that next, actually. And then,
oh boy!
And then there's the kind of shitty net play. And credit to Manga Gamer, they did improve the net play. It is playable sometimes.
Like, holy, it's
but there's
honestly, compared to what we had, this is a godsend.
It is, and credit to them for that. I'm not going to say when I say net play is shitty. If you compare it to our previous, yes, it is better. It is, as Zariat said, a dog send. Now, that's great and all, and I'm glad for it. And I suppose it's going to come off as being ungrateful, but there are some pretty big problems. A lack of spectator mode in lobbies. I think, I'm always, whenever I'm playing, being like, anyone want to stream? But the thing is, a lot of people don't have really good internet to do that. And thankfully, I'm in a situation where my internet's good enough that it can handle that. So that's, it's great for me, but it's also kind of clunky. Like, you put a stream link in your Discord. What if people chat, that link gets moved up? There's not always an active thing for who's streaming what at the time. So there's definitely a sense of, that hurts the community, right? Because even if new players just come into the community, I think, oh, well, who's playing? Oh, here's a lobby. Hey, can I join the lobby, guys? Yeah, come in and watch. No problem. Just come in. Easy. Not, oh, Larry, can you stream? Oh, John, can you stream? Oh, Guy, can you stream? No, I can't. My connection. Beat, can you stream? No, my connection sucks. George, can you stream? Oh, yeah, I can, sure. And it's that's an annoying thing. So that's annoying. What's the point in having a lobby system if you don't have that? So you have to.
Yeah, it's troublesome.
Yeah.
Not to mention the whole point where if your lobby is more than 2 people, there's going to be a lot of waiting.
Yeah.
It needs work. It needs work.
And there's not even a sound to be like, oh, they're done playing. It's your turn. It's just like, what? Oh, I hope you tab in at the right time. And, in OMK, you can kill someone in 30 seconds, or a match can go 3 minutes. So you're not going to be able to just tab in 3 minutes. Oh, yeah, match done, So that's a problem. The net play, though, as I was talking to Guy about it last night, is that a lot of times with you'll see someone standing there or just sitting there blocking, and for me, a lot of times with the characters I play, that's like a trigger to be like, oh, run in and hit them because they're being cautious. So stop, wait a second. If they're not hitting buttons, run in and hit them. So I see that happen, and I'm like, okay, but then it turns out that he was actually running at me and doing a 2C, like on Rono with a guy. And it's like, I saw you just sitting there, but then you ran up and 2C'd me. And it's like, well, if I saw you running, I probably would have just blocked. So that's something that will happen with this net play, even with people who have decent connections to each other, like Guy and myself. So with all these kind of things in mind for the OMK and its shortcomings, and the topic of this discussion specifically here was that this seems like a difficult game to start learning, but the two of you and I suppose myself, how have our learning experiences been so far with OMK? And I still consider myself someone who's learning, right?
I think we all are. Like, I don't think any of us ever stop learning how to play a game. Even if you're the best, there's still something you can learn. Larry is finding new shit every week. And he's basically a robot, so...
I was kind of hoping to get Larry here one day, but I mean, I always bully Larry and talk funny.
Everyone does.
I actually uploaded on this channel that I'm going to upload the podcast to. I had another upload a few days ago where Larry was streaming matches against Guy, and I was just commentating them live, kind of impromptu. So that was fun. And I was kind of like making fun of Larry. It felt like I was cheering on Guy, kind of going against Larry because Guy's my good friend, and Larry's like, nah.
Where's the villain, man? He's Leffen.
Yeah, I could see that. He's not as unlikable, I'd say, but yeah.
No, see, that's the thing. Leffen is likable.
Oh, is he?
He's just, I personally like him the same way I like Larry. They're just dudes on the internet that I enjoy experiencing.
Zarya likes experiencing
I don't
dudes.
know where I'm going with this at all.
No, I understand what you mean. So, how...
Wait, no, hold on. He's Hungry Box.
Yeah, HBox can be kind of like... I have mixed opinions on HBox. But whatever, we'll talk about that later. So, your learning experiences, what do you guys... What is it that, like, how have they been,
So far, so good. That I think I'm gonna explain more in detail. That is related to the reason why I have been kind of silent when you guys like talk about more depth. Because I also when I learned the game, I used this simple and do not overthink mentality. So that I don't like think in depth like anything. I just do things, and I like it's a very slow process, but eventually you can. It's kind of like muscle memory, but in brain. Because, for example, I know for the fact that there's like certain movie theaters that I can, as George, use 3C, and it always counter hits her. It's not. I don't never think. I never are like. He's using that move. I will now use that. I'm like that. I use that move. I don't even think about it. I just somehow know that I use it, even though I don't think about it. It's kind of weird. But this is how I usually learn games. I just play them. I don't think about them that much. It's very weird. I don't know how it works.
Most people learn things like that too. Like, don't think about it too hard. Just try it out, and it'll click.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of like a very instinctual learning.
Yeah. Like, that's basically how fighting games tend to be, unless there's a lot of documentation and a lot of people playing to write said documentation. You're basically winging it, trying to figure out what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting, because I feel like a lot of my play is because of my style. I'm not very set play. I mean, when I get a knockdown, I usually think I have like one of two options ish, or three off the top of my head. Yeah, 3.
Yeah.
So
you jump, and then you either high, or high. That's the cannon mix-up.
Well, with cannon, sometimes I'll run up in 2A out of throw range. Sometimes I wolf jump, and sometimes I neutral tag after I get the knockdown before.
Right.
So
I'll also get more like the actual like meaty Okizeme setup. Like, what can you do on meaty? Either overhead, or cross up, same side overhead. How does that work?
I mean, the thing is, you can just DP. Or they can DP, so sometimes you have to 2A if you suspect a DP. Because it's not really about your... I was telling Guy about this. It's not really about any of that shit. The way I see OMK is like, imagine you're in your front yard, and you have a gun, a revolver with 6 shots, and someone is in the darkness out there with a knife trying to stab you. Sure, you can make educated guesses and choices, but you're really shooting in the dark, and it's just a matter of mind games. People don't really, you could practice a cannon setup all day, but if they know you're Mr. Cannon setup and they just start like waking up with the DP, you're not gonna like get an advantage. Whereas if you're that kind of person that's willing to run up to someone and do like a safe 2A that can punish a DP or not lose to it, most DPs, some you can't. But if you're willing to show that that's the sort of player you are, and then you're willing to go from 2A into a pressure game, and you have the kind of strength like I do to make that work, that's your play style, then you get a lot better results because you're playing against the player as opposed to necessarily like I equate like in my metaphor of having a revolver with 6 shots in the darkness versus someone in the knife who you can't see. It's much more like, oh well, if you know the terrain, you can put your back to the wall and reduce the amount of surface
angles,
yeah, to be attacked. And it's like, oh, that's definitely those types of optimizations are just things you should be doing and are kind of already considered, right? Whereas, like, yeah, you can do, like, a cross-up with cannon, and that's something that should be considered at certain times. But in a lot of times for knockdown situations, you don't necessarily have that option. So, when I think about, like, Larry, I'm going to bully you, Larry, if you listen to this, or anyone who knows Larry. He's a great guy. But Larry's the kind of person who does practice that setup. But you can tell how much he doesn't have the other side, where it's like, well, look, Larry, you don't have that setup. Where's your game plan now? Oh, you don't have one? You don't have really good improv skills? That's interesting. I'm going to exploit that about you and force a lot of those improvisational situations now. And it's like, it's like if you like when he's playing Battler with against my Lucy, I recall there'd be times where I would like bait his DP with 2A, and it's just like he just holds my Lucy shit because it's like, oh well, DP is the thing you used to get out of pressure, and it's like, well, now it's not really working for you, and you could tell that he starts to like crack, and I'll land an overhead or a cross up or something funny, and then. It's not that this always works, right? But just that this situation occurs, and you see him kind of crack under those situations, and you get a burst out of him, right? And it's like, okay, good. Now I'm going to neutral Lucy to cannon, and you get to deal with triple attack touch combo if I land it. So good on you. And as this is happening, I'm just thinking, okay, this is what the initial 3 options are the same. It's like 2A, wolf jump, or like neutral, essentially, with cannon to start. But all the different ways things expand in your pressure and like the mind state of or mental state of someone and playing against the player. Like if doing a meaty wolf jump into 5B just hits someone because they're trying to mash, I'll just keep doing it every time. I mean, no offense, George, but there's been some times where you've like you tried to wake up and maybe do a roll or something or like a 2A, and I would just like meaty you with cannon and get my full combo, and then it'd be
love rolling too much.
Yeah, and it's,
on a habit.
yeah, I see that, and I exploit that. You just look for weaknesses in the game plan, and I think that's what makes. I'm sure the setups can be setups and work, but I think that exploitation of player weakness is where I look in my approach to the game, and that's why I play the characters I do, because they can get in someone's face and kind of do that.
Yeah, like if something works, why stop doing it?
Yeah. It's really just about cycling through things and seeing what works, right? In this darkness metaphor, right? I would like shoot one side, and then I would like run just so that they wouldn't like know where I am, even if I have no idea where they are. It just kind of lets them know, like, I just shot a bullet, dude. Like, I know you have a knife, and I know I have 5 bullets, but I will just shoot and kill you sometimes. And that kind of makes their approach weaker, as like an example of like a mind game situation in that.
Yeah, because now they're spooked.
Yeah, it's like, wow, that gun was loud. That could literally just kill me. And if they're the kind of mad animal that just charges at you, Beat plays like a mad animal, by the way. He's a fucking mad dog. The way he plays, I always equate him to being a wild animal, and you just have to fucking put him down, right? But the Beat would be the kind of person who's like, all right, I'm gonna find a rock and just like throw it somewhere, and then immediately charge, at something and just start slashing wildly. And then when I hear him shoot, I'm gonna like zigzag towards him with a knife. And it's like, well, the thing is, if I come at him before he shot all of his 6 bullets, then my advantage is greatest. And that's just like, wow, but you could just get shot and die, Beat. Maybe you should take... No, I'm going in! Ah! He charges in, he puts down a cat. But anyway, that's kind of how... Not exactly right, but that's how I kind of equate Beat to as his playstyle. It's just wild. It's completely wild. He's a ravenous beast, and when you get... You know, they say that shit. When an animal feels threatened in the corner, they just start lashing out, right? Like...
They'll just do something random.
That's Beat. He'll just hold jump. He'll run up 2A you. He'll 5C you on burn, on wake up. He'll jump 2C you with the Kikarea. He'll hold jump. He'll just keep jumping out of the corner, and you just keep pounding him back in there. And he's held jump like 3 or 4 hits, and you're like, I'm gonna get you one of these times, Beat. And then, like, after the 3 or 4 times of not jumping, working, he lands on the ground and does a TP. It's like, wow, you're crazy, dude. Like, he's just an animal. He doesn't want to be caged. Anyway.
He wants to be in control.
Yeah, basically. So, when I was, to bring this back to the topic of, like, a learning experience, which I kind of forgot to preface all this by, I find that this is usually my, currently, right? Because I'm sort of beyond the point of learning new tricks. With my characters, at least. I sometimes lab it out, and I actually have labbed with Lucy to try and find things, but there's just not much there, unfortunately. Especially with Lucy's like 3C in the past being nerfed, there's just not anything to do.
Let's not talk about old like vanilla 3C.
Yeah, I think it needed a change, but. Now Lucy is just... She's very basic, and I'm okay with that. And I've stood by...
I'm okay with her being basic, as long as her optimal B&B and one of the best combos in the game isn't 3CXN.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was all she did. I'm so glad that's gone.
Yeah, I agree that needed to change. I just feel like her options are shitty. But to keep this on the topic of learning, that's generally my learning experience in a nutshell, right? Is see how things are working and how to respond to them, and how does the player play, and I all that other stuff is just second nature to me, like moving my hands. It's just like breathing. It just happens.
Yeah, it's automatic.
And all my mind power, as Riot says. My mind budget, fucking Riot, is going into thinking about their options and trying to react to things, and so that for me. That's how my learning process works. I tried to lab something out on Lucy a little while ago, with it was like jump. It's a silly thing, but you can actually jump CB, and then if you jump ACB on Lucy against a standing opponent. You actually can start with a cross-up or start without a cross-up and then end with a cross-up, but there's almost no situation you can use that in. So, oh well. Lucy sucks, doesn't have stuff to do anything with, but whatever. So yeah, it's my learning process, how I've done. It sounded like George kind of already talked about his, but what about you, Zarya? What's in this really complicated game, How have your learning experiences been in the past? How are they now? I mean, do you even play? What's the last time you played? Kind of, what were you learning?
The last time I played was I think last week when I played with Guy. Got 5-0'd, upset at myself, and stopped playing because I dropped this beat 2 4 times in a row.
Oh man!
Little tidbit about me: I'm actually kind of okay at this video game.
Oh yeah. I think so.
In fact, I tend to lose more often versus myself than versus whoever I'm up against. If I drop shit, I get angry. And I start dropping more shit, and I start getting angrier, and I stop playing. So, yeah, that aside, my learning process / experience with this game has honestly been very different from either of you, because I was around at the time where, specifically because I was from Europe and nobody else was at the time, I had to learn everything on my own. Nobody to play with, and all I had was the hella wrong ass wiki and the training mode. I want to say that roughly 90% of the stuff that's on the wiki right now was like not data mined because I don't have the tools for it or the knowledge, but I tested every single thing on my own because nobody else would.
Mm-hmm. Like this guy freezes video, advances it one frame at a time to like find information, just for people who are curious.
Yeah, like cute little thing. This game has stun, much like how Street Fighter does. If you get hit too much too often in a short time span, you just get stunned. And for the longest time, we knew that stun tiers existed, that some characters got stunned more easily than others. Nobody bothered to check how much until I just sat down, lost like 2 nights figuring everything out, and I just got even sadder about George existing. But why does he... Whatever.
George is the lowest stun in the game.
Yes, by a wide margin.
It's very weird. I'm not even sure why that is.
But because of all this, my learning experience has been basically hit the lab and learn things on your own. You don't have anyone to put it into practice with, but at least if somehow in the near future you find someone to play locals with, or heaven forbid there's better netcode, hell yeah, you'll have someone to bully. And because of this, it's actually become how I tend to approach fighting games nowadays. I go in on the hard data first, learn how the game mechanically works, and then start to figure out what I want to do and move on. Like, I don't know in which order you two... Like, I know George knew about Umineko and thus found out about Ogon. I'm not sure how your experience was exactly, John. Was it read the novels first, find a fighting game, or find a fighting game, read the novels?
Well, it was back... OMK was new, funnily enough. It was a new fancy thing. And some of my friends were like, new fancy fighting game. Anime. Looks cool. I was like, eh. And I looked at it, and I had those sparkles in my eyes. Like, wow, look at that witch throwing imaginary cute girls with imaginary swords. Every time. So that was kind of how I got to learn about it. And then I love saying this, but I watched the anime and didn't read the visual novels. And I loved it. The anime was great.
Yeah, so I guess my experience, I found out about the game first, played it a hell of a lot, and then bothered to read the novels.
I eventually read up to episode 3. Or, I think...
You should have read up to 4, honestly.
I think I read 1 and 2. It was the one where Rosa was like saving Maria. The ghost?
That's 2.
Yeah.
That's 2, I think.
I don't remember what 3 was. I may have like stopped there. But the manga had like some of the 5th episode that I read. Anyway, sorry.
But yeah, how I approached the game was basically learn how everything works at a mechanical level and then go from there. And since then, I've actually started applying that to every other fighting game I get my hands on. Like, when I first really got into Melty Blood again, that's what I did. I don't understand how the game works. Okay, I picked one character. I played nothing but that character for 2 years. Guess what? This is also what I did in Ogon. And then when I was comfortable with the game, I felt, hey, I'm kind of okay. Let's start branching out. Like, I'm serious. I played nothing but Beato George for like 2 years. That was literally all I did. Like, get home from high school, training mode, do the George combo, Alt F4, do something else. Next day, same thing. Next day, same thing. Imagine this for 2 years. Do you know what insanity is?
I was gonna say this sounds like a part of like a villain's, like, did you know it's like, you know what it's like coming home every day and doing a George combo before I could have my fucking Lunchables. No, you don't. But yeah.
Yeah, and then when this game came out on Steam and people can play, I'm like, oh my god, I can actually put these things to practice. And that's what I've been doing.
Yeah,
And
it's cool that we
and
finally
actually,
played.
I can actually play with you guys all over in America. I'm actually starting to learn new things because I think I told you this when we first played with the new netcode. I had no idea just how bad C buttons were on block until you made me realize, oh wait, parry touch exists. I actually didn't know parry touch existed until Steam release.
That's
And then
interesting.
you use it on me once, and I'm like, oh my fucking god, this is broken.
Uh-huh.
And that's when I realized staggers are actually stupid strong in this game. So I started using them more. And the one guy I used to play with often, I started using staggers versus him more. And, because, okay, no. He started doing his normal stuff to me, ending on C, and I started parry touching it. Because I learned about the new thing, and this thing is broken, so I'm gonna get my cheap wins off of this.
That sounds something what I experienced with you, that you met parry touch me a lot. Yeah, I think it might be me in my early days.
It's this happened with someone else.
Okay.
Their name in the Ogon Discord is Amelia, but it happens with a lot of people. Like they don't know about this one intricacy about the game's engine, so you exploit it until they get upset and ask you what the fuck is going on. And then I told them about how parry touches exist and how to do them. And then he started doing them on me, and I started getting upset.
I learned the parry touch about you when you used it once and did the regular run-off down, obviously, and I was like, that's kind of cool. And after that, I kind of realized that meta declare can be used to something else rather than just using meta supers and stuff like that. You can use it to gain like momentum and stuff like that. It was that parry touch when I realized about how meta declare can be used.
And then I started realizing the staggers are really strong, so I started using them on him. And he started using them on me. And this has been how I've been learning, how I've been evolving at the game. I figure something out, I tell it to someone who's about on the same level as me. They started using it on me as well, and we both try to improve and learn from it. Also, just picking different characters. I do main Beato George, but I think it's actually my team that I play the least right now. You'll rarely see me pick them.
Well, who are you maining then?
That's it. I still main Beato George. I just don't play them as often because I'd much rather play my other teams that I get to have fun with. Like, off the top of my head, Erica Byrne, Rosa Jess Byrne, Beato Will.
Wow, what a degenerate you've become.
What? Just picking... cut me some slack. I'm main bottom tier. Let me play some top tiers every now and then, okay?
Oh man, that's not cool.
Shut up. Oh, forgot one. Possibly the team I have the most fun with, fucking Runo Ange.
Oh yeah, I used to play that a little. Yeah.
I think that's the team that makes everyone, like, when someone new is starting to learn the game, that's the team that makes people understand how abilities interact.
Yeah.
Like, that alone. Because it's like, oh, fuck. I pressed the button. I lost 2,000 life, and that's pre-stun. What the fuck just happened?
Yeah. It is interesting. It's probably the most visceral way to learn the significance of abilities.
I think visceral is the accurate word for this, yeah.
I do try to have good verbiage, so... Man, yeah, you know, your story has reminded me somewhat of how things were for me when I started playing. I felt like I don't want to say nowadays, because Larry came along and was able to keep me honest for a while. But I felt for like a good portion of the game, I felt untouchable. Like,
Ooh, the God complex.
oh man, yeah, like
Ooh, I like where this is going. Go on, go on.
I mean, when I first started, I could barely do ABC until level 2 on Battler. But as I played more, I don't really know how or why, but I kept playing, and yeah, I did have some losses, but like, eventually I remember like, it started around when I started playing Guy a lot. Because Guy was one of the first people I played consistently. And like, I think I played other people before, but it's all kind of like a blur, right?
Right.
And I just remember I was in before Cross. I played Canon Lucy, which it was actually pretty okay pre-Cross. I don't know if it was top tier, but it was okay. And I was like, yeah, this is good. I played Canon Battler a little too. It was all so good, and then they buffed Canon ability because they were like, this sucked. Oh man, back in the day when there were buffs, what a time! But I remember that change where they made Silent Attack not completely shit. And I found myself like, wow, look, I'm winning a lot. Like, people would ask for games, and I'd play them, and I'd win, by and large. I was chumming up with Guy at this point, and we were playing a lot, and Guy was playing Rono Battler. And I got a lot of wins off him because, Rono pre-cross, pretty bad. But he was determined to make it work, and, man, I just learned by playing people. And I would eventually fiddle around with other characters and just like have ideas and see how things interact. Because there's a StarCraft 2 mod called Heptacraft. I think there's some stuff on this channel with it, funnily enough. But again, I was big in Brood War, and this is something that's very much like kind of makes a StarCraft 2 and make Brood War into like a mod, but not like a one-for-one translation, but taking the essence of like, oh, well, here's Brood War Terran, and here's like a StarCraft 2-ish kind of Terran. And here's Brood War Protoss, and here's Protoss in StarCraft 2. And the first thing I did when I learned that mod, and this was a couple years, 2 or 3 years ago, is I went through the game and I just looked at what every single unit did, and looked at the buildings they had in the research time and the cost for stuff. Looked at the ranges, the damage, the health, the armor, and just thought about how these units would act in all of these different situations. And I would just be like, yep, alright, I see how this entire race works now. And it would take me like 30 minutes to an hour to really delve deep. And I just did this for like 2 days, going into each race and just saying, yep, this is what all your units do. And a lot of them I did sort of know from Brood War. I never played StarCraft 2, game fucking sucks. But so I had to learn what those did as well. And I just, that was my learning process. And I did something similar in OMK. I don't do it now, but there was a point where I looked at characters, and characters that compelled me, funnily enough, were, there was Shannon, for sure, Anjay I really liked, and Bunny, 410. And I liked Beatrice, and I liked Virgilia, but I didn't think they were very good. I was wrong about Beatrice, I'll confess. But
hella wrong.
I really liked those characters. Anjay, Shannon, and 410. Like, the way Bunny's arrows worked, and playing a zoning game against someone, and getting the 6C uppercut and launching people, and it's magical, right? And if you're really good at those mix-ups too, you can do things with that. Oh, it's there's nothing quite. I'm sorry?
It fit well. It just made sense.
Oh yeah, totally. It fit like, that's the perfect way. It fit like a glove. Like, I loved it, but when I needed the wins, it was Lucy Battler, it was Cannon Battler, right? Like, that was my win. But I still experimented with those things, and now I think I've somehow gotten to this point where, like, I just play people, and that's kind of how I learned. I've never looked. I don't really watch videos. I don't watch Japanese videos and pick up techniques. I just sort of discover how things work on my own. I mean, I'm very much like this even in my writing. People will say, oh, well, this seems a lot like something else, except, like, obviously it's its own spin and unique, and I'm like, well, good. I want to have my own unique identity. I don't ever want to be, oh, I watch fucking Japanese video and I'm just a conglomeration of a nerd who watches Japanese video. Sorry, Larry.
Next couple.
Hey.
Yeah, And if that's how you learn, that's fine. And obviously, like, I think that's the majority of how Larry does it. And he obviously gets results, but it seems kind of soulless, Whereas I can like say, no one helped me come up with any of my style. And now
How do you think I?
yeah, I mean,
All my George shit is mine. Fuck all of y'all.
yeah, and that's a really satisfying feeling. Even though I know like people look at what my playstyle has evolved into with Ken and Lucy Bat is it's very much just something that outplays people. And I know there's this really stupid guy in our Discord. His name's Cam or Sam or something, and he likes giving me shit for a lot of stuff. And I always thought like the one thing that I don't think people can give me shit for are the results that I produce when I play. Like,
I think if I'm just going to say it flat out, you're not a flashy player. You are actually incredibly boring to watch. I'm going to tell you that straight to your face.
mm-hmm.
But like someone like Larry just goes for a lot of flashy shit, a lot of fancy stuff, and that's cool to look at. Guy kind of does that too sometimes, depending on if he's feeling like it or not. Even like the basic B&Bs he goes for with George, for instance, he always goes for the Dash 2B stuff, and that stuff, yeah, it's his bread and butter, but it's cool to look at. It's flashy. When you're playing Lucy Cannon, I have never seen you go for the Wolf Jump B&Bs. I've never seen you go for the 6A neutral jump C loops with Lucy.
They can tech out of them.
Things that,
They can tech out of them. That's why.
Not in meta.
I guess, but what's the point when you can just do a full combo?
The point is that you get a lot. Like if you're going fucking whatever details, but you see where I'm getting with this. You are extremely consistent at doing the basics, and that gets you places. I personally respect that, and that's why I think you're like a really good player, top 2 in the server easily. But a lot of people, Cam included, will talk shit about you because of it, because you don't do fancy stuff. And that's what people look for in players, is the fancy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Larry has nothing but fancy stuff. That's why people suck his dick.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love watching Sean a lot. It's so simple yet effective with what it means.
It's consistent. And that's the key word when you're playing something competitively. Consistency. I don't care that you have a 9,000 damage combo that you can do if you land this specific starter. Or even if you land any starter. If I'm not going to put... If I'm playing with you and I don't let you get into that position, then what's the point of you knowing that combo if you're never going to do it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is why I understand why you don't go for wolf jump combos, for example, because I know you're not consistent with them. Why risk losing... why risk dropping a 1,200 damage combo when I could just do a 700 one that gets me the same result?
Pretty much, yeah. And if they flip out of it, of stun especially, then they just flip out super quick, and it's better to do the one big hit as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that is true. That's the style. I think that the time that, let's say, if you look at the gameplay in terms of not so much how fancy are your combos, but like how good are you at like actually playing. I think that higher level players, the likes of which Cam isn't, for example, they just see it and they're like, oh yeah, that's pretty good. But it's kind of it's something that isn't. Yeah, it's not flashy to an outsider. I can I'll openly attest to that. Like, yeah, you see my style, it's going to be boring. I just run up and hit people. But it's not, I think, until you're either facing me or trying to beat me or whatever, or you learn to play the game.
You really understand or like give credit where it's due.
Yeah, because it just looks like I'm hitting people, or oh look, he's just doing pressure. But it's like, well, this pressure isn't just like me hitting buttons that are plus. This is like a very complex set of interactions that I'm like responding to. It's great, I think. I love watching like videos of myself playing. Just like, oh man, that's so good. Look at me go.
Ego on this man.
I also would like to ask myself if I do something like cool. Because there's one match where I actually defeated Char, but which I actually rewatched 10 times in a row. Yeah, I'm a very egoistical person.
Wow, damn. Well, yeah. So I guess at the beginning when we were talking about this topic, that was where I originally started. That's how I am now. But yeah, the initial learning was just in the same way I did that in the Heptacraft mod. I just kind of went through and saw what everything did, and then I usually get a very good because I have such a grounded foundation between Ken, Bet, Lucy, and if there's ever a situation where I 2B someone on Lucy or I run up 2B and they beat me, that means that you're doing something that's better than one of the best run up pokes in the game, and I can kind of apply that to other situations oh well, Erica 2B just beats everything, including that, so you can just do Erica 2B in any situation. This would be kind of what I learn. Just through osmosis of playing against these other characters with characters I really understand, I started to pick up how they work. And that's why I can play Erica in the neutral, even though I don't know much about Erica and her complexities. I just know how the neutral game works by fighting her, and I have a general idea of how her moves work. So that'd be I guess all I have to say really about how I can learn, or how I eventually learned. Never went to really do combos in training mode because the thing is that stuff's boring for me, right? I actually used to be able to do the canon 2C wolf jump 5B 5C 5B DP, but I just when we went from 3 delay, which is what I always had to play at previously, to the 0 delay, it was just so hard to get used to that timing because it's already a tight link, but I could do it, right? Not super consistently, but anyway, I just don't have fun in training mode. So the fun for me is interacting with the other person, and funnily enough, I play a team that does that, in spades. Well, we have our final topic that I think Zaryat. This one was one that he.
Oh yes.
Gosh, one that he posited, right? More than us. This is mostly his idea, but here we go. Okay, so everybody, we'll start with you, Zaryat.
Oh boy! When this guy approached me about the podcast, this was the first thing I tell him. Let me do this, and I'm on board.
Yeah. I just said, yeah, I did the podcast, and George brought it up in the chat. He was like, oh wow, podcast, that was cool. You should do a second one, and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess, but my friends are lazy. And George was like, I could do it, and I'm like, yeah, I love you to death, man, but I don't know how good you are. And I was like, wait, it'd actually be good to have someone on the podcast who's not as good. That'd make for interesting conversation, right?
And it did, honestly.
Yeah, I think it's been good. And Zaryat, I'm always like, hey, here's the thing, and Zaryat's like, oh gee, gosh, I don't know. That's how I imagine Zaryat every time I propose an idea. He's always like, yeah, maybe, sure, I don't know. So I'm just like, Zaryat, man, here's the thing. He messages me like, yeah, I can do it in an hour, and I'm like, oh shit, okay. So I'm asleep. I just got up to piss and looked at Discord before I went to bed. So Zaryat, right? This is one thing he seemed enthused about, and that is that now not exclusive to characters, but what do you think is the most broken and or overpowered thing in OMK?
There are a couple, and I think these are the things that completely make me wish I didn't like this game. So first of all, parry touch should just not exist.
I agree.
For those unaware, with regards to the touch mechanic, you can actually swap partners during block stun by just hitting D. Makes sense. You swap characters and you get the opponent off of you. What they don't tell you in the history books is that if you do 60 instead, you spend the exact same resources to do this, except the opponent is in 10 times the stun, which means you can combo off of your opponent's pressure. If they press a button on your block, they get hit for 2,000 damage. Where in the fuck does this make sense? People bitch a lot about Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Guess what the game has? The exact same thing. On no resources.
Oh, really?
I think it costs like a bar, but you build a bar by breathing in that game, so whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's the first one. Mechanically, it's flawed as hell. Air techs need some work because, as you've explained, trip guard exists. You can't block on the first frame after landing, no matter what you were doing. This includes after air techs, except during air techs, recovering on the floor, you're actually in counter hit state, which means you get punished harder for air teching than from not air teching, which kind of defeats the purpose of the mechanic existing altogether. I am so angry about this. You just can't see. Like, And the big one. Last but certainly not least,
George.
Willard existing.
Ooh, yeah.
I thought it was George. I was very sorry that's George. I think it's Villar is also OP, maybe.
Who'd you say?
Yeah. I was saying that I thought Chariot think George is the most OP character. I think I didn't expect at all it would be Will.
Yeah, George is broken as hell, but yeah, like he needs some nerfs. Like the character's out of control for sure. Willard, man. Willard!
Oh, well.
Willard motherfucking H. Wright is a piece of code that some dude in his basement decided to write up, threw shit at the wall, hoped it stuck, saw it, and went, this isn't good enough. So he buffed the fuck out of it, and then went like, this seems like a good character. Let's make him even better. Oh my fucking god, where do we even begin with this guy?
Okay, so I'll take my initial practical approach. I feel that it's very approachable for people even who don't necessarily understand a ton about the game, right? So we're going to look at a few of Will's tools real quick. Now, the main one, what I think is not necessarily the most important part of his kit, but I think it's what prevents him from losing to me, which is really the most important thing. So, his neutral tool. He has a really good air game, and this is a game where jumping is pretty good. So, his tools are, his air-to-air game is really powerful. It's not the best in the game because there is Burn, and she has the best jump normal in the game, and she also can jump twice and air dash. And keep in mind, no other character, only 2 characters can air dash, and only 2 characters can double jump. And Burn can do both.
Yeah, what a bitch.
Everyone else has to jump once. So, like, imagine you're playing a game like Street Fighter 2 where someone can jump twice, except the jump arcs are like, twice as fast. That's kind of what you're dealing with in OMK. So, being able to stop people from jumping in a game where jumping is good, it's powerful. Will's jump A, he just kind of throws his sword out, and if you get an air counter hit in this game like Melty, it's very much like, air counter hit, time to fuck someone up kind of deal.
Exactly, absolutely.
And so being able to just jump in the air and like tap someone with something is powerful. As long as you have a way to pick it up. And Will has a lot of ways to pick it up. But that's not even the point I was trying to get across, right? Will's air game is pretty much uncontested by anyone except the absolute best. There's the 2 girls of the sky, our ladies of the sky, who's Ava and Burn, and Erica. Their air game is unparalleled to anyone. But Will somehow manages to keep up with them. Now you might think, well, keeping up with them, is that really so bad? Well, yes, it is, because of a lot of other things Will has. We're going to start adding to a pile of Will, okay? So, there's a funny little link there. So, there's the pile of Will. Now, that's just the first step. So, air game. Now, you'd think, having an air game that's defensive against some other air game is okay. But he also mimics one of the best, probably the best move in the game, if Will's jump A or jump C didn't exist, which is Battler's tie. Now, Battler will jump up and do a tie, and it creates a massive hitbox, and there are generally 3 states of hit stun in this game, or block stun, and there is a 4th state that is induced by very, very specific, very powerful things, tie being one of those things, and Will jump 2C. So, the thing is, if you hold 8 jump, which is just a neutral jump straight up, and do a tie, at the very least, you're not pushing forward. It's not a lot of offensive potential. So I think that while it's still broken, in a nutshell,
you're not moving. It's a wall. You're in place, putting out a hitbox.
Yeah, exactly right. So you're not pushing forward, but Will can do the same thing. It has a bit of startup, so he can super jump at you and then do 2C, jump 2C, and the move comes out and it stays out for as long as it's active. Like, when I say that, it stays out until you hit the ground. So, after those initial frames of jumping, it's there. And because of the way, super jump angles, it's like a parabola to some degree. So, when you hit the ground, it's like that little sword is just sticking out so far and hits them and just keeps advancing. And it's so hard to punish. And if you do block it, Will can just run up and then, start doing his pressure game. So that's the first place I want to start with. Like, if you have a character, Virgilia's not even good, but Virgilia can be jumped at. Her offensive air game and defensive air game is shitty. And I feel like that would be like something that you could say, oh, well, you look at little niches of characters and you just say, oh, that character kind of sucks. George gets eaten up by parry touch and his neutral game just isn't very good, right? His ability isn't very good. It's like, oh, there's 3 niches that he has that makes him suck. You look at Shannon and her inability to have forward momentum or offense. Oh, it's not very good. She doesn't have a very good, normal poke game, but her neutral can be sort of okay. But once you start realizing you can break it, it's not very good. She doesn't do a lot of damage. Oh, it's not very good. So, you'll see this, right? But in the same way that you look at these lower tier characters and say, oh, that's not very good, here's some weaknesses. You look at Will and you see nothing but strengths, because he has one killer thing about him that makes him godlike, so that he does something better than anyone else in the game. But he also just tends to be like, oh yeah, you can just compete with the ladies in the sky, even though most characters are just subjugated to their whims when they start jumping around and have to hold whatever they're doing. But Will doesn't. So that's one element of Will that prevents me from beating him on my characters, is that he can jump 2C, and it's really hard to approach. And if I fuck up, I take a ton of damage because Will does a ton of damage. So Zarya, what?
That's the other thing about Will, right?
Yeah.
He deals a fuck ton of damage in a very special kind of way for this game.
Mm-hmm.
See, damage touch is very useful to get out of combos because you burst out. Makes sense. The only nuance is that you have to be standing in order to damage touch. Will does all of his damage off of juggles. It doesn't matter what he hits you with. If he goes into 2C, 6C, you're taking at least 1.7 or 1.6k meterless from just getting hit once. If he has a bar, oh boy. So I say that Will existing as a whole is a problem, but honestly, the one move that makes me want to just completely kill myself, actually, I'm at a balcony, I can just open the window and throw myself out, is fucking EX Whirlwind.
Mm.
So, the way this game works, right, juggle combos have a limit because only certain moves force a juggle state. Once you're in a forced juggle state, you can be hit by anything, and when you are hit by anything, you can be hit again and again and again as long as you don't leave hit stun. The second you leave hit stun, you flip out, and you can land safely. This is why Rejump Infinite don't exist, because hit stun runs out.
Mm-hmm.
The problem, which basically means that Willard does 6E, which forces juggle state, and then depending on how good the player is, you're either eating dash 5B, jump BC, or 2C, far 5C, jump BC. Same end result, JBC. This leaves you at a perfect spot where if he has no bars, that's it. He has to mix you up somehow, which he has a tool for. Why does he have everything? Fuck.
Yeah, see, you just keep coming across like, oh yeah, well, in that situation he has this, in this situation he has that.
Like, okay, he doesn't have a bar. It's a cross-up left-right or cross-up high-low. And there's nothing you can do about it. It's a four-way mix-up off of an air juggle, which, by the way, stuns George before he even lands. So, in the situation that you do have a bar with Willard, after the JBC, remember, as long as you don't leave hit stun, you can still get hit. He can land and do SP Whirlwind. SP Whirlwind basically has negative startup and forces juggle state.
And also, if you're on the ground, it picks you up.
It also hits OTG.
Nothing else in the game hits OTG except like Erica, which is a level 2 that hits them and then shoots cannons at them and gives them an opportunity to block that she can't capitalize on until after.
Actually, there are some nuances, but I'll get to that. Basically, they'll do the combo. I have a bar. Cool. SP Whirlwind, let me do it again. And you just took like 3,000 unburstable damage for one bar. Give him a magic fuck ton of bars, and what does he do? Triple meta super. Because of what? SP Whirlwind. And by the way, SP cancel. Luckily, not that many characters can make use of it, but Willard himself is a monster because of it. Give him 3 bars, and don't contest his meta, and you're taking 3.2k for free.
Yeah, the thing is, OMK is usually a game where if you get into a situation, you can kind of it's like Third Strike. There's like a universal overhead where you jump into the air and then just do an overhead, and a lot of people are like, well, it's pretty safe because at worst they just kind of hit you once out of the air and you land. So that tends to be the case with OMK. Funnily enough, the top tiers they get a lot off of that situation. For example, Rono can go 6C, Jessica can pick up, Ava can get a setup and an air grab, Burn can do an amazing 2k combo and stun you, as can Will. So, pretty good stuff, but yeah, he has a way to just pick you up over and over in a combo, and that's it. Like, there's no interaction, and even though it can be risky, and there's positives and negatives, if there's ever a time where you don't want to take damage, you can burst, but like Zaret's saying, it's usually an interesting nuance, because you often have the choice between, I could take a guaranteed combo where they can't burst, but I genuinely will do a lot less. Or you have characters like Rono who are like, well, you can't burst like kind of that part, the 2C, 6C, but you can burst before it. And it's like, well, if you want to get the most out of like doing a safe, unburstable combo, Rono's the way to go. And except if Will didn't exist, or Jessica didn't exist, or whatever. But Rono, I think, actually is pretty equivalent for the meter he spends and what you get out of it, but I digress. Yeah. The other thing about this is Will has a meta super that does a ton of damage. But you often don't really even see it utilized, because I feel that everything about Will is incredibly good. But then when you add in the EX Tornado, the EX Whirlwind, EX Pickup, whatever you want to call it, it's just too good. It starts pushing Will into insanity. Because Will is already really good if you stun them somehow, and let's say you just end with like a 2C, or you end your combo with 2C, 6C into Meta Super. And then you can pick up, because this launcher combo, you usually can't do another Meta Super after it. But if you have the meter and your SP cancel, which is what Will's ability is, you can pick up with it and then use it again. And that's already a ton of damage. But there's just even more ways to kind of extend damage. There are other characters that do this dump meter to get more damage. The two cases I really think of are Beatrice and George, that do it well, I should say. But Will spends 1 meter and gets a lot more, and has this amazing meta super. And again, his neutral game in the air, amazing. His grounded neutral game is like average. It's not the worst thing, but it's not amazing.
He has some good tools. Like I don't understand why 6B is neutral. I really don't.
Yeah, for pressure, it's like, oh, he does have something. So it's like, sure, against some characters, like the best grounded neutral characters, you can't do too much. You can still get away with more than anyone else can against them usually. But the thing is, not everyone in the game is a top tier ground based neutral character, like the three I play, for example. So Will can do a pretty good job of pressuring him. And you just see a lot of things stacking up on the top tiers. Will, these are like really basic things, but I'd have to agree. I think Will is just too much.
I fucking hate the character so much.
You know, it was interesting. I never really thought about how the EX Tornado was really what holds Will together, but it is.
I feel like that move alone is what makes him one of the best characters in the game. If you made that thing not force a juggle state like it does, if you just made it like, even if you do let it hit OTG like it still does. Oh, by the way, yeah, it hits OTG. So after a knockdown or even a throw, you can just do it, and it'll force the juggle state anyways. So he gets the same unburstable damage off of a throw.
And a game with zero frame throws.
What the fuck is this character? Yeah, 0 frame throws. So if you fuck up pressure next to him, you're gonna get thrown. You're eating 2,000 damage, possibly way more, simply because it's goddamn Willard H. Wright.
Yeah, and a lot of times, like as an efficiency thing, it's like, well, throwing into EX Tornado doesn't, for your meter cost, because after you throw, your damage is scaled. You could think there's an argument that could be said that it's not the most efficient use of your meter.
Actually, you're wrong on that.
Really?
Throws do not scale damage. OTG hits are. So guess what? The EX Whirlwind, that thing is scaled to half damage because it hit OTG. The juggle itself is full damage.
Oh, really?
Willard gets 2,000 damage off of the throw for 1 bar. Well, no, 2.
Yeah, it's 2 bars for 2,000.
Because of that alone, it's fucking stupid.
Well, either way, you could say, well, 2 meters for 2,000 isn't the greatest, but the thing is, there in fighting games, you see, like, if you can spend some meter to win, you do, usually. Unless you have such a lead that you don't think you need to spend it and can save it for the next round. So, with Will, it's like, man, if you do happen to just, like, get 1 throw, you know, most of the time that's like a 300, 400 damage, I think. Not a lot in this game. So, it's just crazy that anyone who can pick up damage off of throws, because we all kind of agree throws are broken, but we all also agree that, well, no one gets anything off of a throw except 2, 3 characters. The top tier ones, funnily enough. No one really gets a ton off of them. And sometimes, like, Bunny can throw and then meta declare, but that's really, like, it's okay at best. Especially compared to the top tiers. So Jessica has something similar. I think she should be the next topic of discussion, if you were going to ask me.
Oh, yeah, of course. Enchant.
Uh-huh. But to just to continue on with Will, being able to just kill someone by doing a throw is pretty stupid. And again, you can't even like burst out of any of this damage. And the combos are pretty long in general, so you usually just kind of have to watch. It's really dull. Will is like a character that just sort of plays the game by himself doing his stupid combo. Because you get like the EX Tornado and then the 6C is also a launcher. And I'm like, you just see like optimized Will combos doing things like EX Tornado pickup into 6C again. And I'm like, what the fuck? You know? Why does this exist? Like, I feel like everything, like you're saying, could exist, and he would still likely be a top-tier character. But
right.
The EX Tornado letting him do all this crazy shit, enabling too much, is ridiculous. The Jump 2C neutral game is ridiculous. The fact that he has a very average, ground game, it's not ridiculous, but with all the other things, it ends up being, like, well, you can't even just like bully this guy when he's on the ground because he's okay. You know, he has to jump 2C to like really deal with anything on the ground. So, it ends up. I don't know how you're supposed to really beat Will, because you can't really out neutral him that easily, especially with rollback. I'm just like playing against Larry, and I'm like, oh, he's just sitting there, and then he rolls it back into like a jump 2C, and I have to block it, and I get guard broken, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, if I saw that coming, I would have like ran, but whatever. The next defender, like we were saying, is Jessica. Well, what do you have to say about Jessica?
She's annoying at least. Especially against delay. Because she can just get really... Jessica's kind of character who... if you make one mistake, she can just go for like super stupidly long combo, which like insta-stuns you if you play George or something. It's like, it's not really that like... At least if I can get hit first as George, I can usually like win him in neutral or pressure, but if he gets hit first, I lose instantly. It's basically, at least from my experience.
Jessica is... She has too high of a damage output for what little she spends. And by what little, I mean literally nothing. I'm fine with characters having explosive results as long as there's some sort of like downside or cost associated with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I am fine with Beatrice hitting me for 3,600 damage off of a single opening because she has to spend 5 bars to do it. I think it's justified. Meanwhile, Jessica hits you with anything. If she doesn't have enchant up, sure, that's what, 1 point something K in the corner, 800 mid screen, something like that.
It's still enough to stun if you have a partner, which is like the main standard of which is like...
Oh, no, I'm assuming like completely solo without the partner coming in, just Jessica on her own.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it's just important to consider like 410, for example, can never do enough damage to make her partner stun unless her stun is exceptional at stunning. Our partner is exceptional at stunning. So, it's like, you would hear bullshit like, oh, well, Jessica without enchant. No, not that you're saying that, right? But some 2 other people will say certain things about it. And it's like, well, she still stuns for her partner. That's what matters at the end of the day. She still stuns. Her damage output without her enchant is still just like above average damage output. So
yeah, especially in the corner, like she gets, I think it's 1.2 or 1.4K, which gets her enchant up in the process. Mid-screen, it's like 900 or something. It's still commendable. The problem is when you give her enchant, and before even factoring in the fact that this is a 2v2 video game, the fact that Jessica has a character alongside her to do things with. Jessica on her own gets, what, fucking 2,000 damage mid-screen by doing buttons into attack touch to the partner. And in the corner, meterless, without her partner, she gets 2.8 and stuns most of the characters in the game. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
and
like,
we're only talking about her damage output. We're not even talking about the use of her tools.
yeah.
Like, sure, she shits damage, but like the biggest offender is just how big and how active 623 is. Like the explosion.
Oh yeah. The thing is, when she has enchant as well, and again, getting enchant isn't hard. I feel that even though I play Canon Lucy Battler, if I stay on her, she'll eventually like get something to hit me, or get some space to put up an enchant. And I do my best to kind of stop that, but it's really hard. And I imagine it's even harder for other characters that aren't super fast and able to like get in her face. Plus, you can just like get enchant and then take because most other characters can't do a ton of damage without any meter or anything, that you're only going to get like one combo from one character. So just kind of eating that, so to speak, and then enchanting isn't even that bad for most of the time, honestly.
She's like the character with the single highest solo damage output in the game, isn't she?
Yeah, I think
Assuming meterless, of course. Metered, I don't think anyone can beat Willard.
Yeah. Yeah. It's too much. The other thing is her other tools. Well, because having just damage might be okay, but there's a problem with the cost, like you're saying. So that's silly.
Yeah.
But the other thing is her 214A. It's weird, and it knocks you down, and I think it's either it's +1, right?
Which one? The one that steps back or the one that stays in place?
The one that steps back.
That's A version, yeah.
Yeah, that's like plus. So it's like she has this move where, yeah, she'll just lean back and like punch you, and that thing, it's like, yeah, if you're right next to her, and you have a really deep move, you can hit her. But the thing is, we talked about this earlier. 0-frame throws, right? Do you really want to like start playing the game where you're right next to someone? Not usually. So why would you do this? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me, because that move, because of throws, becomes much better than it has any right to be. And if it hits you, it knocks you down, which leads to an enchant, and then she gets to like run up to you. And any type of mistake leads to a ton of damage against Jessica. Another thing about Jessica is, if she picks you up with a throw, I think it's 1.4k damage, right, without any meter?
Yes.
Yeah.
Assuming you have hands.
Mm. So that's another thing about Jessica. It's just a ton of damage. And you might think, oh, this doesn't sound too bad, but she can also do 2C, which is +7. So you get stuck in pressure, and then she does 2C, and if she's right next to you, you can't actually do anything if she goes 2C into 5B. Except a reversal, I think. I'm not even sure if that works. It might be a true block string, but... So, amazing pressure. It's basically this. If she grabs you, if she gets any form of offense on you, being a grab, or forces you to block a move, she can go into her 2C pressure. She can just do a super long string, because she essentially gets Lucifer's ability, like Attack Touch, for free. But it's just on her character all the time and never wears out. So, there's that. And if she hits you, of course, she does the most damage in the game, outside of like Will spending 5 meter, which admittedly is a little ridiculous. I think most of the time with Will you're going to see 2 to 4 meters at most being spent.
Usually 3 for triple meta.
Oh, that's right. You can get triple meta, can't you?
Yeah, because depending on how you time it, you can actually, like, after the meta super, you can do EX Whirlwind 6C meta super instead of having to do EX Whirlwind meta super. But it's tight. It's easier on Rono than the entire rest of the cast, but it's doable on everyone.
Well, there you go. So, she has a lot of those tools. Just so many tools. The 2C being plus in pressure. Man, the shit ton of damage, the ability to do something off a throw, the ability to get the attack touch, essentially another character's ability for free.
And people say that her buttons are bad. She has a bad neutral game because her buttons are stubby, but like, that doesn't matter when your every single button moves forward 5 feet. Mm-hmm. Like, she presses 5B, and she goes forward like a character length. I don't think there's any other button in the game that does this. 5B is really fucking... 5B is extremely fucking fast, moves forward like an entire character's width. And, like, the fuck?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I really don't think any other character has a move like this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, actually... can we count Cannon 2B?
Lucifer 5B moves her forward a lot, but it's like -18 on hit or block.
Yeah, man, just because it's like, what, -1 or something?
Yeah, but I mean, did you hear that though, man? A 5B is like -17 or something. A 5B is minus 17 on block. Minus 17 on block. Let that sink in. Like,
Isn't Cannon Tube even worse?
it's pretty bad, yeah. Like, what the fuck? That's so unfair. That's what's OP or broken. That needs to be fixed.
We really need to push Manga Gamer to do something about these things. Come on.
Some of those two things I think really need to be changed more than anything else. But, well, okay. So all those things with Jessica just make her too good. Because the thing is, if your character's just like super good at offense, then you need to be bad at other things. But the worst is Jessica's normals, which we can both attest to. Like, sure, they're not going to beat the best characters in the game, but they shouldn't. A character that does everything else like Jessica shouldn't also just beat the best character's neutral game on the ground, or in the air even, in Jessica's case.
Right.
It's like, you shouldn't. Should she just have the best normals? Should she just have one of the best like defensive tools? Again with the step back thing. When the funny thing with the step back and punch forward move is once it comes out, it's actually like unpunishable.
Yeah, it's fully invuln, and I think every single version is safe if charged or something.
Yeah. I think.
Not to mention EX is +3.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, so I think those guard touch, Will, and Jessica, they're all pretty big offenders. I do think Lucy's 5B being like minus 17 is a pretty big oversight, personally. I don't know why that is. I think that's offensive, right? Like, that's OP against Lucy. Lucy is like hurting herself, right?
Yeah. The character designed to keep my face in yours gets punished for pressing the button that moves me forward the most. But see, and that's going to be actually a common issue with a lot of the characters in this game that have buttons that clearly say, I want to use this up close, are actually horrible to use up close. Like, big examples that I can think of. George Close 5C. That thing's an overhead, and if landed meaty, you can actually combo off of it with 2A. That's sick. The problem is, if it hits people on any other frame other than the very last one, the pushback on it is so much that you can't combo. Even worse, if someone blocks it, you're like at minus a billion. Moves that should reward you for being able to actually get in up close and do them do not reward you for doing so. And if you go and look through most of the characters in this game, you'll find that all of them have moves like this. Isn't Cannon Close 5C like minus 30?
It's something ridiculously minus, yeah.
Yeah, I think the only character that actually has good close normals is, again, Jessica.
Oh yeah, Jessica has infinites with close normals.
Jessica has the only known infinite in the game, but, well, known theoretical infinite, because nobody's been able to pull off more than 3 reps of it.
Yeah, like her close moves are super plus, so if you're ever just in a situation where like you are close with Jessica, well, you have an even better pressure gain, even though your 2C is already +7 at any range.
Yeah, it's just not fair.
Well, we have been going for a while, but to rattle off a few more things before we kind of come to the conclusion here. Some broken things. Well, Jessica for sure. Ava jelly setups are pretty broken. 0-frame command grab with all 4 other options are really broken in general. Burn is a
existing.
Burn is a character that does everything well, except a grounded neutral game. But she compensates for this by having a Kakera system where she just gets to generate Kakeras and just jump 2C and then puts down a cat to cover that. And if you get really good at that, like Beat does, you can just win. So yeah, even though technically her ground normals are actually stubby Jessica players, like actually not that great, and her 5C is still serviceable and 2Cs, whatever. She compensates for it. She has double jumps, she has air dash, she has another air twirl DP thing to alter momentum. She has a great zoning game. She's actually a zoner that makes playing every other zoner kind of obsolete. It's like, even if you shoot a stake, a jump 2C Kakera kills the stake and then lets the ground cat still come out against, like, Beatrice. She has so much mobility that she can bully other slower zoners, like Virgilia, for example, or Rosa. Rosa may have a little bit of an argument against her where she can do okay, but Burn also does 1 billion damage and has amazing pressure, and has an amazing neutral when she isn't being forced to be really close to people and hit them with her normals. Also, the longer Burn sits there and waits, the more Kakeras she generates. I believe she can generate up to 10 Kakeras, if I'm not mistaken.
Up to 8, 1 every 60 frames. It falls back onto what I said, like, rewarded for not spending anything. Like, there's always going to be this dichotomy in fighting games where if it's risky, you get rewards. That's how it's always been. That's why DPs are good. If you guess right, you get them off of you and deal damage in the process. If you guess wrong, you eat shit. The risk-reward is skewed in such a way that, well, it's high risk, high reward. Burn sits there and gets rewarded for 0 risk.
Yeah. Like putting down a cat, oh man, it's just like a little Hadoken.
I am building resources that will allow me to completely obliterate you in the neutral game. And you can't do anything about it.
No one else has anything equivalent. Like, no one else has, like, because we all play by the same mechanics of, like, well, you neutral tag out, you get rid of half of your guard, or your current guard meter, and you get an ability, and you get back any gray life. So that's like a mechanic everyone has. Everyone can assault touch or do attack touches. But Burn has her own mechanic of just getting Kakeras for some reason. It's very peculiar. There's no equivalent to that.
Bullshit character.
Yeah. I'm just kind of like rattling off my tier list. And then those are all the A tiers. An interesting consideration is how overpowered the neutral game of Erica and Battler is. Both Battlers.
See, I don't think exactly that they're overpowered. They're just... the characters below them just don't have as good tools. Like, when you get to your Erica Battler tier on your list, I stop thinking they're broken. I just start thinking they're good. And that they're the characters people should pick if they want to win, but still have a soul.
Yeah. Those characters are pretty good, but they're not quite... I think that in any other fighting game, those characters would be like, these need to be toned down. But because there's a tier of bullshit above them, they're kind of like... It's like, oh yeah, well, you know, fucking, we have Hitler, and it's like, wow, that guy, he's really awful. And it's like, oh, well, there's this little girl down the street who, like, steals people's cats and dogs and, like, tortures them to death. And it's like, well, that's still pretty awful. You know, just because Hitler exists doesn't mean you get a free pass. That's how I feel about Erica and Battler. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. We've actually been going for 3 hours and 3 minutes.
Uh-huh.
So, I definitely... You know, it's funny. I woke up... I think it was after like 4 or 5 hours of sleep, and then was just this podcast just kind of impromptu happened with these two guys who said they were willing to do it, and I wanted to do it, and I thought, man, it's now or never. And sorry, it's talking about time zones, and so I think this.
Absolutely. Because like, hello, it's 20 to 4, 20 to 10 actually.
Yeah, I mean, if it works, it works, and I could make it work. I just had to stop sleeping. I can go to sleep now if I want. But yeah, I'm definitely like feeling pretty tired and feel like, oh man, I'm not contributing to the conversation as much. So
Yeah, and honestly, as fun as this is being, I do have to get going at some point. I am actually still at the office. I left work supposedly left work like 4 hours ago, and I'm still at the office.
Yeah,
Because of this. So you owe me.
Whoa! I'll owe you. I'll owe you a nice podcast on my channel. How about that?
Hmm.
And possibly more. If people somehow find this and enjoy it.
What if this goes viral? They'll be like 3 idiots talk about a fighting game.
Nobody plays. Dude, I'd love that. Dude, get this on the SRK homepage. That'd be sick. Yo, shout outs to my homies. Shout outs to the Hitbox Dimension. Shout outs to #Mineko. Join the Discord.
Yeah.
Follow me on social media, etc., etc.
Like, favorite, and subscribe.
Hmm.
And leave your comment down in the comment section below.
Yeah, I actually, because the channel is so small, I actually do read every comment. There was a guy on the last video, I read his comment and I was like, oh man, those are some good ideas. It actually got me kind of inspired to want to do another one. It's like, one person left a comment, that's all I need, dude.
Dude, sometimes it's all you need, yeah, like the little motivation to keep going.
Yeah, a little bit of positivity.
I need to start packing and getting my shit ready to leave, so I will have to sign off.
Yeah, well, it was fun, guys.
It was
Yeah.
all fun and hell insightful.
I did have few things I would have liked to talk about, but if you guys are tired already, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's not exactly that we're tired, it's that I do have to get going. I would honestly keep going for another hour or 5.
Yeah, same here, but it's fine.
Yo, same time next week?
Oh, man. We can, we'll talk about a time if you guys, want to make this a more consistent thing.
I can basically do this almost every weekend, mostly. Because weekends are free for me.
So I don't have to stay at the office.
All right. Well, I'm going to end this. At least the recording. We can just schedule it here. But we're signing out. Join us on Discord if you want, or if you like OMK. I commentate a few matches on the channel. So yeah, join Discord. We stream sometimes if you want to see it as well.
Yeah, enjoy having the fun. The game is hella broken, as we've made it obvious, but enjoyable. So give it a shot.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed. We're stopping the recording